This is A's Cast Live, your comprehensive look at the Athletics.
Leaping at the wall, it's gone! A towering drive into center field by Rooker.
And 29 other comprehensive look at the
judgy and blast. All right. Here comes the judge.
Swung on, hit high, hit deep to right, away back into the second deck.
Bobby Witt Jr. becomes the first shortstop in Major League history to have two 30-30 seasons.
Shohei Ohtani starts the 50-50 club.
Join us as we take you inside the baseball universe, from humidors to walk-off dingers to Hall of Fame talk. We have you covered. Spend your afternoon with us, only on A's Cast Live. Here's Chris Townsend.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome to a special edition of A's Cast Live. Going to be one of the toughest that we have ever done since we started this show in 2019. Because of the shocking news that we got on Friday, announced on Saturday, the passing of one of the greatest players to have ever lived. And such a special player, just not a guy that, when you think about what he meant to an organization, what he meant to the Bay Area, what he meant to Oakland, what he meant to the Oakland A's, what he meant to the game of baseball, and to have it at the age of 65 is just, it is just shocking that Rickey Henderson is no longer with us. And we knew that today that we needed to put on a show to honor one of the greatest players who have ever put on a uniform in our game. And we have an unbelievable show for you today. A's Hall of Famer Dave Stewart is going to join us in moments. A's Hall of Famer Carney Lansford is going to be here. Our A's historian David Feldman will be here. So Carney at 9:30, David Feldman at 9:45. New A's Hall of Famer Jose Canseco at 10. Also new A's Hall of Famer Terry Steinbach at 10:15. Shooty Babitt, who has known Rickey for a very long time as they played against each other as kids, and he's known Rickey his entire life, at 10:30. Ken Korach, the voice of the Athletics, at 11, and then Steve Vucinich, who knew Rickey Henderson for his entire career, at 11:30. It is very tough to put into words. When I found out Friday night or Friday early evening what had happened, I couldn't believe it, because we've been around Rickey so much, especially at the end of the season. I co-hosted the event with Comerica with him in August. We had the Hall of Fame inductions. Then we had the final games at the Coliseum, and it's like we saw Rickey so much. And to think that he is gone. What an inspiration he was for so many. I think one of the special things has been all his teammates, the people he played with the 9 different organizations, so many of the greats in our game, coming out and talking about Rickey Henderson, the person, Rickey Henderson, the teammate, just not about all the records, not about the stolen base record, not about the run scored record, not about just the greatness on the field, but the man he was off the field, how generous he was. The Mike Piazza story, talking about when they were doing playoff shares with the Mets, and Rickey was like, whether somebody had just come up for a week or 2 weeks, he was full share. Give everybody a full share, because he knew this money was life-changing for a lot of these guys. And a lot of the times it's the veteran guys, it's the star players that they want to have the full shares, and we'll give people a little bit. Rickey was give everybody a full share, because that's who he was. 11, and then Steve. So a lot to talk about today about Rickey Henderson. We're going to honor him the way he should be honored, as a grade A, as someone who meant so much to the kids of Oakland, kids growing up, and he was such an inspiration. Kids in Oakland, kids in the Bay Area, all the different cities he played in. And we're going to lead off with a man who knew him better than anybody else. One of the great A's in the history of our organization, one of the greatest big game pitchers of all time, a man that grew up with Rickey Henderson, sneaking into games at the Coliseum with Rickey Henderson. Dave, it's been a couple days. I got to see your interview. I know how emotional you were on MLB Network. It was fitting that had you on that day, because I don't think there's anybody better to have on to talk about the passing of Rickey Henderson, because I know you guys have known each other since you were, I believe it was like 12 years old. My condolences to you, your family. It's hard to believe he's no longer with us.
It's it's a difficult one to really grasp, Tony. That is not believable news, I think is the best way to put it. When I first found out about his passing, I had to ask several times, you must be mistaken. It can't be true. It's just a difficult one to really grasp. Rickey is a person that you just don't see him not being here. He's a guy that somehow survives time, and you look up and he's still here centuries from now. Is the way you envision him, because he was in such great shape, and his spirit was young and vibrant and always laughing, and those are the things about him that really make it difficult to believe.
The thing that you like to tell people about him, because we always focus so much of just about him, the athlete. There was something about him when he walked in the room. There was something about Rickey Henderson, the way it just the things lit up, and the way he had that it factor that everybody was so attracted to him. You got to see it your entire life. Talk about the way people just attracted to Rickey Henderson, just how special the glow that the man had about him. Wherever he went, it was a big deal.
When you have that type of confidence, let's really think about it. He's never not been successful. He's literally been successful at everything he's done. All of his life in youth sports, minor league baseball, Major League Baseball, Hall of Famer, All-Star. But it's not the sport that made Rickey. Rickey, as we all know, made the sport. And so when you're that type of personality, when you walk in a room, you command that attention. There's that glow, as I guess you would call it. There's that he carried with himself, and so everywhere he went, as you said, immediately people were drawn to him and wanted to talk to him, because he had that type of personality. He was funny, he was engaging, he loved people, and you could feel that from him. And that was another part of that factor that brought people to him, because he had a genuine love for people and wanted to engage with people.
I remember the first time I met him, it was actually, he was with the Mets at the time. It was early in my career, and I remember I was so nervous to go up and ask him for a pregame interview, because, at that time, he already knew he was going to be a Hall of Famer. He was an all-time great. And he was so easy to talk to. And I think the one thing that we're really learning a lot, from all the people that played with him, because we just think about the records and we think about the greatness. People don't talk enough about what just a great teammate, and just how good he was to everybody, especially as he got older with a lot of the young players.
Well, that's why he played for so long, even past, his 25 years in the big leagues. He played independent baseball past that. And in his current life, he was still coaching with the Oakland A's, both at the major league level and in the minor leagues. He had a genuine love for young players, and the type of knowledge and impact that he can have on a player is like no other. He walks in the room with a respect, and when you walk in the room with respect, that means that people will pay attention. Not everything that you say or I say is something that you can use, but there's enough knowledge there that while you're spitting out this information, there's going to be something that these players will grab onto and hold on to. That could be the difference in being a lifetime minor leaguer or a lifetime major leaguer. If you grab it and you understand it and you can apply it, that makes a career for some of these guys. I can tell you this, that the kids, they enjoyed being around Rickey. They wanted to soak up every bit of information that he had. They enjoyed the laughter with Rickey. And he's great for coaching staff. I was speaking to Omar Minaya, who hired Rickey as a New York Mets first base coach. And one of the things that came out of his mouth in the first breath was how good Rickey was with the players. And it continued. Like I said, he was in an independent baseball as a player, but really as a coach, coaching those kids along. And then he continued to do that with the Oakland A's organization.
I know at one point you were working on a documentary for him, very similar to The Last Dance that they did with Michael Jordan. And it kind of tells you, how great Rickey Henderson was. And I think about when another great that we recently lost, Willie Mays, that both of you were over at Oracle Park for that celebration of life. When we're talking about there's great players, there's Hall of Famers, there's that upper echelon. Like Willie Mays was in that upper echelon. Babe Ruth in that, Ted Williams, these guys, Henry Aaron. Talk about how even when you're playing with them, you knew that there's great players, but Rickey's in that level that was just different than everybody else.
Rickey did things that, Willie Mays, I still consider him the best Major League Baseball player ever. He's number one for me.
Yeah.
But Rickey Henderson is, and I've said this, and I'll say it time and time again, is in that top five. And because Rickey did things that Willie Mays couldn't do, or Mickey Mantle, you name whoever you have as your Hank Aaron, you Babe Ruth, you hear all the names. You just said Lou Gehrig, Ted Williams. You pick whoever you want to, and I guarantee you, when you look at those guys, you'll see batting average, and you'll see power. You'll see that they drove in runs. But I don't think any of those guys had the impact of a walk equals being at second equals being at third, and sac fly or ground ball is a run. Or in that leadoff spot to start a baseball game, if you don't make the right pitch or you don't hit your location, then that's a run. He did things, and we're just talking about the offensive side of it. If we look at Rickey defensively, which I think he was very underrated and his defense was understated. Rickey was a great defensive player. He played left field as good as anybody played left field. People talk about lack of arm strength. Well, what he did with his lack of arm strength, and I witnessed this. I would see Rickey at every ballpark that we played in, get to the park during batting practice, playing balls off of the walls, play a ball off the left field wall. If it bounces off that wall, where is that ball going to end up ultimately, and where should he be when that ball comes off the wall? And he would position himself to get to the ball quickly and get the ball in quickly. I never saw him throw to the wrong base. He's a great defensive player. But when we talk about Hall of Famers, the reason why I rate Rickey in the top five is because he possessed so many skills that were impactful in winning a baseball game without hitting the ball out of the ballpark.
When we think about scoring runs on productive outs, obviously he scored the most runs of all time. But as you just mentioned, sac flies, ground balls, I would love to see that number, who is even close to him when it comes to just scoring runs on productive outs. It's just it's how great he was. I think about kind of the bad rap he got, and it's really from that time, Dave, as where free agency starts to come into the game. And then in the 80s, they're trying to really kind of figure out the economics of the game and how to deal with free agency. And you got ownerships, and you have the players union. You have a lot of work stoppage. You have labor strife. You have all of this. But Rickey knew his value, and certain players like Nolan Ryan was the first $1 million player. These guys started to know their value to where we are today. If Shohei Ohtani signs a big contract or wants it, no one sweats it, right? Like they just understand you're a really good player. You're going to get paid. That's how the business works. But back in the 80s when you guys were playing, the media vilified you guys if you wanted a lot of money. The fans were kind of with the media, the owners. If Rickey Henderson would have played in an era like this, no one would have had an issue with the fact that he wanted a lot of money. All players wanted a lot of money. It's just talk to us about it in that time. People are still, and in all sports, football had the labor strife, basketball did. Everybody was trying to figure out how to deal with free agency. If Rickey Henderson played today, it'd be a whole different deal when you talk about contracts and money.
No doubt about it. When in our early days, I mean, let's think about this. The highest paid players in, let's just say the late 80s and early 90s were $3 million.
Yeah.
That was the highest paid player at that time. But when we think about where we were in that time, even Rickey and I both came into baseball when the minimum salary was $21,500 for your first major league season. That number now is $750,000 for your first major league season. The average salary is just around $5 million a year now for just the average salaries. Salaries now are in the 40s and 50 millions now. We weren't even close to those numbers. But when people in that period of time that we played in, it was difficult to grasp why a player was making even $1 million when the $1 million barrier was broken. It was tough to grasp why a player was making that kind of money. Now people understand entertainment. There are actors that are making $20 million a film. Basketball, the numbers have gone, crazy, astronomical in basketball and football as well. So all sports are having athletes that are, making $200 million, $300 million in a career. And so it's more common because the numbers in all sports, which, by the way, hockey hadn't caught up to baseball. And at that time, basketball hadn't caught up to baseball and football hadn't caught up to baseball in terms of salaries. And so baseball was leading the way back in those days in salaries. Now all sports are flourishing and they're making great money to play the sport. And so I think it's more acceptable today, the salaries, because every sport is making money. And I mean, to be honest, I don't know how you would have paid Rickey in this day and time. I just don't know how you would have paid him. Obviously, he'd be at the top of the pay scale, but it's just unbelievable the things that he could do. Ohtani's at 700. Soto just broke 756 or 765, whatever that number was. And Soto's not even the best player in the game. So how you pay a guy like Rickey Henderson in today's time would have been baffling.
Let's end on this because I know it meant so much to you when you were playing and even to this day, and the same thing for Rickey. What you guys meant to the kids of Oakland, what you meant to the kids in the East Bay. Just talk about, Rickey Henderson now. So many people looked up to him and said, you know what, I can better myself and better my life. There was more than just looking at Rickey Henderson, the baseball player. He was a symbol of hope.
Yeah, I mean, when I was watching MLB Network and Jimmy Rollins, they showed Jimmy Rollins doing an imitation of Rickey. And I mean, he had Rickey to a T. Every mannerism, everything about Rickey, Jimmy Rollins was able to do. He had that impact on Jimmy Rollins. And there are multitudes of other young players, young kids that he had that type of impact on. But, today's player, somebody might say that the player that they want to be like is Jimmy Rollins. Well, the truth is the player that Jimmy Rollins was is the player that Rickey Henderson was. And so Rickey Henderson and who he was, the way he played the game, his mannerisms, his style, his flash, his excellence will continue to play out in Major League Baseball for longer than we even know, because as he impacted Jimmy Rollins impacted somebody else, and it continues to go on. And I think that that's one of the beautiful things about having that type of influence on a player, because it allows you to continue to live on long past your days.
Thank you so much for the time this morning. I wish it was under better circumstances and we were talking about something else. I know how much he meant to you. You guys grew up together more than just being big leaguers together. You grew up as kids together, playing against each other, with each other. Just a sad day, but thank you so much for stopping by. Be well, my friend, and we'll talk soon.
Thank you, Tony. Thanks for having me on.
The great Dave Stewart, A's Hall of Famer. Yeah, you think about Dave and Rickey, how they grew up sneaking into games together and then someday gracing the field together. Just an unbelievable friendship for a very, very long time. And to spend the past couple days, Carney Lansford, teammate, is going to join us at 9:30 to hear all the different people that he played with. And just to, Don Mattingly, it's something that we actually got to see with A's Cast. Don Mattingly told the story that in Oakland, when he was managing the Marlins, he called up Rickey and he said, "I'm at Rickey Henderson Field. Where are you?" And Rickey says, "I'll be out there tomorrow." Well, we were there and we saw it. When Rickey Henderson came down and Don Mattingly, the great Don Mattingly, comes over and they're hugging, they're taking pictures, they're hanging out. They're always like that. I mean, they were tight. And it was really cool to see. Donnie Baseball and Rickey Henderson. The relationships that he had inside the game were very, very special. Tony La Russa talked about, Tony's traveling today. He's not going to be able to join us. But Tony La Russa has some quotes out there about what Rickey Henderson meant in the clubhouse. I mean, there's more than just the stats that this guy brought to the table day in and day out. And even what we got to see the last times we got to see Rickey Henderson. So I wanted to start with Dave Stewart, because I can give you, I just put into the search browser and AI came up with it. Rickey Henderson records, right? Obviously, we know the most runs scored, most stolen bases, most steals in a season, most steals in a decade, most walks in a career, most steals after 40, most leadoff home runs, most unintentional walks, most runs in a season, most steals in a postseason. There's all these records, but there's something about when Rickey Henderson came into a room, the place just lit up. And I'm trying to, was our Comerica event, was that in August? I want to say that was in, August.
Yeah, that sounds about right. August.
So it was at spring training this year. I had to go talk to Rickey Henderson in Matty Weiss's office about talking Rickey into doing into the Comerica deal. And I went in and I sat down with Rickey and I'm like, "Rickey, this is the easiest thing in the world. We'll be in the visiting clubhouse. They get all the stuff out of there. Teams on the road. They set up these beautiful tables. We'll have a steak dinner. And it's basically the banking community shows up. People are in suits. They're coming from work. And it's a really cool event." And Rickey agreed to do it. He's like, "All right, we'll do it." And let me tell you something. When he walked into that room, and I told him, it's not like your average fans. People are not going to be dressed in A's gear, here, sign everything. It's really, it's business people coming from work. And Rickey showed up. And to watch all of these very respected people for Comerica Bank just turn into kids. And to see Rickey Henderson at the same time, like that glow, like the room just gets brighter when he walks in. And Rickey loved it. He absolutely loved it. He stayed way longer than he was supposed to stay. He got into all these conversations. He's taking pictures with everybody. They had baseballs for him to sign. I got up there with him, and we did about 40 minutes of just laughing and talking. It's so casual. I know there's video of it, so I know we recorded it. But it was it was a moment where I always knew when I was dealing with Rickey Henderson, I was dealing with one of the greatest players of all time. But I just always knew what a special person he was. And in a setting like that, where Rickey just got to kind of let his hair down and talk to people, not a lot of guys can do that. Not a lot of the greats can do that. A lot of the greats are very guarded. A lot of the greats don't want to give their time. I don't know why. Rickey was somebody who could just be a regular dude. And I think that's having him around the organization was always so key, because when Rickey Henderson put the uniform on and he went to spring training or he was down on the field during the regular season, Rickey was the type of person that no matter what the age or what the age gap difference was, Rickey could always relate to the players, because Rickey at heart will always be a player. And Rickey was never going to big league. I mean, he was just somebody, he could razz you and he could give it to you and he could take it back. But Rickey was always one of the guys. And I don't know how many of the all-time greats can really be like that. Rickey always seen, and that's, when Dave was just talking about, he kept playing after his years of Major League Baseball, and he's playing for the Surf Dogs. I mean, he's playing, but Rickey just loved being in the clubhouse. Rickey loved playing cards. Rickey loved being around the guys. He loved baseball, but he just loved the bond. Guys and dudes being dudes.
2005, at age 46, Rickey Henderson played his final professional season with the independent San Diego Surf Dogs, whose average age was 26. And 307 plate appearances. He had 270, with 16 steals and 73 walks. The Surf Dogs won the title that year.
By how many guys? And Rickey was really good with his money. How many guys who has basically, I mean, Rickey did well, right? And how many guys who have that much money at 46 years old, who have had a career that he has had, which is one of the greatest careers in sports, is going to be riding buses with guys who are in their early to mid-20s. How many people would do that, right? But that's who he was. He wasn't big leaguing those kids. He rode the buses with them, and we talked to him about it. He enjoyed every moment of it. He loved it. There's something, it's hard to put it into words how cool. We are seeing all the highlights of the pop in the collar and the home, and we're seeing the swag. And that's what made Rickey Henderson Rickey Henderson. He was purely an entertainer. He was incredible. But also just what a great guy he was. The Piazza story to me, you got the Mets. It's in the 2000s. They hit a World Series, the Subway Series. They got a lot of high-profile guys. They got a lot of big contracts. And that whole thing about, so basically there's this pool of money that the players divide up. And the players decide who gets what shares of the money. And throughout a baseball season, you're going to have a lot of people that come in and out of the clubhouse that participate then in the 25. Guys come up just to throw some innings. People get hurt. So there's a lot of moving parts, right? And so everybody is going to get something who participated in the Mets getting to the World Series or getting to the postseason, right? And Piazza tells the story. It's if you subscribe to The Athletic, you can read about it, to where Rickey Henderson was always saying full share, give everybody a full share. Because Rickey knew that the star players for the Mets, they had millions of dollars. They didn't have to worry about it. And Rickey said to Mike Piazza and to some of the other, because at this point, Rickey Henderson, what his career has been, he had the voice to be able to say, this is life-changing money for some of these people. The amount of money some of these guys were going to get for where they live in the United States of America can help buy a house. Some of these guys who got a cup of coffee, that's all they will ever get. And they've been living off minor league money. And now you're going to get this share. This means a lot. And Rickey Henderson was the one guy who stood up for everybody, said full share, give everybody a full share, to where a lot of those players did not want to do it. But when you got the magnitude of Rickey Henderson saying, pay everybody the same, help all these guys out, it's important. That speaks volumes to the man Rickey Henderson was. And that's why today I want to tell a lot of those stories. We've heard all the stories about, the records. We know what an incredible athlete he was. We've talked to him before on A's Cast about he believes he could have been an NFL running back. Boy, his mom was smart. His mom wanted him to play baseball. I mean, you go to the NFL, would have never made the money, wouldn't have played as long. His mom was smart to have him play baseball. And in the end, the guy that scored the most runs, the object of the game is to touch home plate. There's two things that you want to do in baseball. We can have all these metrics. We can have all this data. There's two things that you want to do in baseball. You want to touch home plate, and you want to prevent people from touching home plate. That's the name of the game. And nobody in the history of the game has touched home plate more than Rickey Henderson. Nobody. It's not even close. And as Dave Stewart talked about, and it's so true, nobody in the game scored more runs, because most guys are just all guys. You need to get on base, and that's why we've always valued on base percentage. But then you need your teammates to do something productive to get you home. Base hits, balls in the gap, ball over the wall, whatever it may be. Rickey Henderson is the one guy in the history of baseball that scored more runs on productive outs than anybody in the history of the game. It's truly incredible at how he'd be able to score on a sac fly, on a ground ball. All the pitchers, the way he changed the game of how pitchers and catchers hold runners on. Because people started to realize, I got this big leg kick. He's stealing second base and stealing third easily. How do we combat this? Well, they figure out a thing called the slide step. And all of a sudden, you got all these coaches with stopwatches saying, hey, you need to deliver the ball, and catcher, you need to get the ball and throw it to second base in a certain time, or you're never going to get Rickey Henderson. So he changed defenses. He changed the way pitchers delivered the baseball to home plate, what catchers were going to do throwing to second base. He changed it for the hitters because obviously catchers, they knew if they were calling breaking ball, Rickey Henderson was stealing second base, no problem. So all of a sudden, hitters are going to get more fastballs. Just the way he changed the game was unbelievable. Do we have Carney Lansford? Carney, welcome back to A's Cast Live. Thank you for coming on. I know it's under very tough circumstances to talk about your teammate, but thank you for joining A's Cast Live once again.
Okay, Chris. Yeah, thanks for having me.
As I was just talking about, and I believe you got to hear, so many things about Rickey Henderson that it doesn't get talked about, but truly just how he changed baseball, the strategy of baseball. You were a part of that. You got to see it hitting behind him.
Absolutely. Chris, it was amazing. You talked about the slide stats and all that stuff and the hitters getting more fastball. That definitely was true. But, he's such a great player and a great person. I'm still kind of in shock, really, to be honest with you. It's like disbelief. First off, I don't know if anybody knew besides his wife and family that he was even sick. And I didn't know about it until Stu called me, Dave Stewart called me on Friday night to tell me. So, Yeah, he just really changed the game. The good thing about hitting behind him was I got to listen to catchers talking to themselves back there. Like in the World Series in '89, we're playing the Giants and Terry Kennedy's catching. Rickey either walked or got a base hit in Oakland. And Kennedy, I step in the batter's box and Terry's like, just take it. Go ahead and take it. I know you're going to take it. Just do it. And so I kind of had to step out of the box and kind of laugh a little bit and he'd get back in there. So it was just crazy hitting behind him.
Yeah, we don't hear enough about Rickey Henderson, the teammate, and it's very unfortunate that he has to pass away, that now all these different stories are going to be coming out from these teammates. Tony La Russa talked about it. I know Dave Winfield, Don Mattingly, a lot of the former A's that played with him. You played with him multiple times, different stints in Oakland. Just talk about what Rickey meant to not only yourself, but he meant to everybody inside the clubhouse.
Well, in '88, we really didn't have a leadoff hitter. He was still with the Yankees, and actually Tony started me off in the leadoff spot. That's how desperate we were. Yeah. And so we knew, we lost in the World Series to the Dodgers, but we knew we were missing one player. That was a leadoff hitter. And in '89, we were in Kansas City, and we just lost a tough game. And I remember Tony coming up to me and saying, hey, you guys are battling, just hang in there. We got something in the works that I think is going to help put us over the top here. So just hang in there. And the next day, they traded for Rickey. And I think we all knew, that's the one piece we were really missing. And so we were just extremely ecstatic that we were getting him back. So that's how much difference he made. And, he was really, as far as the team goes, he had a couple guys that he would talk to a lot, but he was basically more of a quiet guy more than anything else. He's just a quiet, great leader.
When you think about work ethic, to keep that body in such great shape, what did you see when it came to the day-to-day to be able to do what he did, sliding into head first, putting the pounding on his body day-to-day? What did you see him do to be able to take that kind of abuse to the body and show up and produce every single day?
That's part of what's shocking about it. I think, before, if I would have thought about Rickey, I would say this guy's going to live to be at least 90 unless something crazy happens. You know what I mean? But, he wasn't a drinker. I don't know, maybe occasionally he had a beer. I don't think I ever saw him have a beer. Hello?
Yep, we're here.
Oh, I don't think I ever saw him have a beer. Matter of fact, before games, he would drink hot tea in his locker. And, I'm sure he worked out at home because I don't think I ever saw him work out in our weight room. But, man, the guy had the best body I think I've ever seen on a man.
There's no doubt. I mean, the shape that he was in, and we heard Don Mattingly talk about it, going, people just don't realize, what he did to his body and being able to prepare and to be able to go. When you play with the greats of the greats, when you were playing with them, did you realize, looking at the numbers, looking at the productivity, that you were truly playing with one of the greatest players who had ever played?
Unbelievable. Yes. No doubt in my mind. From the first year that I played with him, if he stays healthy, he's going to be a sure ballot Hall of Fame player. We all knew that when we were playing. We knew he was going to be a Hall of Famer. So just certain guys you knew. But I've said it a number of times. In my personal opinion, Rickey was the greatest all-around player in the history of Major League. I mean, he just did everything so well. And more than anything else, everybody knows about the steals and the walks and the runs scored. But, being the third baseman, and watching him, he was such a great left fielder. He just really, he was phenomenal out there. I mean, he made plays that nobody else could make out there because he got a great jump on the ball and he had a great arm. And then when he had a runner at second on a base hit, I was the cutoff man. So Rickey threw a natural little cutter to home plate, which I always thought was kind of funny, but he had a great arm. And he's just an underrated left fielder, in my opinion.
Yeah, that's something. I mean, obviously, when when speed is your game and you're so dominant offensively, it is kind of sad that no one ever talks about his defense.
It really is, because in my opinion, he was a Gold Glove outfielder every year. I mean, that's how good he was. So, yeah, that's the one thing I always tell people is, everybody thinks about the other things, but his defense was so underrated. Crazy.
And, something that a lot of guys never get to experience and you got to do it. Rickey Henderson got to do it. Dave Stewart got to do it. It's the pressures of playing at home. When you have everybody that you grew up with is watching you, there's a certain pressure. Talk about that when you're playing in front of the people you grew up around.
When I first got traded to the A's, because I was born in San Jose, raised in Santa Clara. So, the A's were my team growing up, the early 70s guys. And, when I got traded to the A's, it was like a dream come true. But like you said, there's a lot of pressure now because you're playing in front of the people that I grew up with and went to school with. My family's all there in the Bay Area. So that's a lot of pressure, but after a while you just get used to it. You just don't pay attention to it. But, I don't think Rickey ever felt any pressure about anything. That's just how great he was. I mean, the guy literally, he's the one guy that could not take BP, not take any, fly balls or ground balls in the outfield or any of that stuff, and just show up and play. And Tony used to say he's the only guy that he's ever coached that can just show up and play. Now on the other hand, I had to come in, 3:30 in the afternoon, go to the batting cage and do my hitting drills in the cage, but almost every day. And I had to take ground balls at third base. But Rickey, he was so good that, like Tony would say, he's the one guy that can just turn it on at any time. So that's just how good he was. And I was always so jealous of that.
Well,
I literally was, man. The guy was so good that you just go, why can't that be me?
And we are in the entertainment business, and he had swagger like nobody else. How much do you watch baseball today and you see somebody do something and you go, you know what? Rickey Henderson paved the way for that.
Yeah, he was so unique. It was amazing, with his head first slides and all that stuff, Deacon, like he's gonna run when he's on second base. And, he was just an amazing player. That's all I can say.
Yeah, it is a very tough day. Carney, thank you so much for the time this morning. As I said to Dave Stewart, and I'll say to everybody else, I wish there was under different circumstances, but thank you for your time. We always appreciate it. And you be well and happy holidays.
Yes, thank you, Chris. Thanks for having me again.
The great Carney Lansford. You think about Carney having to hit behind Rickey Henderson. Wasn't easy to do because you got a guy that's you've got to take a lot of pitches. You've got to have a lot of patience. You think of all the great base stealers in the history of baseball. If you're going to hit behind those guys, you've got to take certain pitches that maybe you want to go a hacking because you're worried about your stats too, right? And we have talked to Carney about that in the past. That's why I didn't want to get into it with him. But, I mean, it wasn't easy, right? And Rickey always had that little sign. He was picking something, whether it was his pants, maybe something that people wouldn't see. Like probably now in baseball, they would actually see. We watch everything now. Not saying they didn't back then, but it was pretty primitive how Rickey would just give a little sign, I'm going, versus when he wasn't. But the patience hitting behind him, you had to have it. Or anybody was stealing bags. You had to give them the opportunity. And it's funny how he talks about Terry Kennedy in the World Series, talking to himself saying, just go ahead and steal it. I mean, the mind games, the pressure that he put on everybody on the field. When somebody is going to take 90 feet, we've talked about it so much in the post-game show that we do, where guarding 90 feet is so critical in baseball. This is a sport. How do you play the sport? No matter what level, there are strategies. And you've got to guard, and you got to play defense, keeping guys from getting to first, from first to second, second to third, third to home. And you think of defenses that when somebody like Rickey Henderson would get on first base, how it would dramatically affect everybody. It affects the pitcher, obviously. It affects the catcher, obviously. But then it starts messing with the middle infielders. Because now whoever's going to be taking the throw, whether it's the shortstop or the second baseman, now you start to cheat closer to second base. Now you've created a bigger hole. So if I'm the second baseman and I know Rickey Henderson's going, I'm going to cheat more to second base. Now this hole to my left between me and the first baseman has now gotten larger. And for a guy like Carney Lansford to shoot that ball into the right side, now the right fielder's thinking about it because he's thinking about, well, if Carney shoots it to right, I got to try and get Rickey at third. So maybe now the right fielder's starting to cheat in. My God, you think about how many guys Rickey Henderson gets on first base, how many guys are out there in the field on defense, and now Rickey's affecting him. Just the mere thought that he's going to go. Just the mere thought that he is going to take off. He's obviously affecting the first baseman because the first baseman's got to hold him on. So we're talking about he's affecting the pitcher. He's affecting the catcher. He's affecting whoever, whether it's second or short, we'll call it second baseman. He's affected the first baseman. Now the right fielder. I mean, how many guys is one player offensively on first base affecting? Because Mattingly talked about it where he said, listen, I got on first base. Nobody cared because he wasn't going. It's what I talk about all the time with Juan Soto and all of his walks that everybody talks about. Juan Soto gets on first base. He is a non-factor. A lot of things have to happen to get Juan Soto to second, to third, to home. So his walk's great. How many times he gets stranded? But Rickey Henderson got on first base. It's now affecting the entire defense. It's affecting the lineup. Probably doesn't have to get talked enough about is how much it affected the pitcher. Because I can tell you, when you start to slide step, all of a sudden you're changing your mechanics. You start changing your mechanics, you start changing release points. You start affecting when you start worrying so much about the guy at first base and not focusing everything on what you got to do to get the hitter out at home plate, the mind games that are going on, because everything about sports is you want to have conviction. You want to have belief in what I'm doing out there. To be successful, you have to have the ultimate belief. And what I'm doing is going to be right. And if I'm so worried about this guy leading off first base, and I don't have full conviction to get this guy out at home plate, I'm dealing with the best hitters in the world. And the cat and mouse game with this guy who's taking these big leads, and I got to worry about throwing over. I'm worried about throwing over, worried about throwing over. Now I got to worry so much about how fast I get the ball to home plate versus I got to make the best possible pitch every single time to the hitter. That's what my focus should be. And this is where Rickey Henderson was so devastating, is he took everybody out of their mental game. He disrupted the absolute flow of the game inside the game, the strategies in the game. I, as the pitcher, am now not pitching with full conviction on getting the hitter out because I'm worried about throwing over to first base. I'm worried about the slide step. I'm worrying about getting it home. My catcher is gutless. He doesn't want to call any breaking balls because catchers know I have no chance to get this guy out. And if I call a slider, breaking ball, changeup, split finger, anything that's not coming with full velocity, I got no chance to get Rickey Henderson out. And now that's on me. So Rickey is forcing the pitcher to pitch without conviction, and now he's got the catcher worried about not being able to throw him out, and the catcher's now worried about his own stats. I mean, when you really talk yourself through it, and Terry Steinbach is coming up, at 10 o'clock? Oh, he's coming? It's amazing how much he affects everybody. You talk about the center fielder now is to worry about the throw from the catcher. I mean, all the different people that he affected in the game, unbelievable. David Feldman, our A's historian, joins us here on A's Cast Live. And before we get to his where he is historically, what he was as a player, I want to take you out of your being a historian here and take you back to being a kid. As somebody who grew up watching Rickey Henderson, growing up as an A's fan, you know, we're going to talk to a lot of people today that played with him, won with him, but someone who grew up idolizing him and he was your favorite player. What was that like? And just, you know, how tough was that news for you?
I mean, the tough is it's still kind of sinking in, still can't believe it. But for me, the first time I saw Rickey Henderson play, I was 11 years old. So Rickey made his debut in June of 1979 in the doubleheader against the Rangers at the Coliseum. I was not at that game. The A's then went on a 10-day road trip, or 10-game road trip, finally came back to play a twilight doubleheader against the Yankees. And I went with my dad, and there were 19,000 people in the stadium for the Yankees. 19,000. There were fans sitting behind the bullpens. And in that year of, 79, the year that drew only 300,000 people, I've never seen fans sitting by the bullpens. It was huge. It's the first time I saw Rickey play, 5'10", fast. But then in the 8th inning, he hits a sinking liner to center that Bobby Mercer tried to play on one hop, and he gets under his glove. And within a blink, Rickey's at third base. And I remember my dad turning to me and going, "That's the fastest man I've ever seen." And my eyes were like, how did he get there? Mercer the ball barely ticked behind him, and he's on third base. And that was my first memory of Rickey. And so I'm 11 years old. Now he's my favorite player right away, right? When you're 11 and you get this guy from Oakland and he's that fast, you love him. And so for me in my baseball career as a fan, from 79 through 84, I'm on all these games, and there's Rickey. 1980, hits 300, steals 100 bases, breaks Ty Cobb's record. Ty Cobb, 100 stolen bases, hits 300. The strike year, should have won the MVP. Riley Fingers wins. It should have been Rickey. We can debate it, and I'll win that debate. Should have been Rickey. And then obviously in 82, it's go crazy time. 130 steals. With 42 caught stealings. 172 stolen base attempts. Are you kidding me? Teams don't even attempt that many bases. And Rickey, to his own, will say that was not a very good year for him because he didn't hit very well that year, right? He had 267, but he still got on base, right? You have to get on base a lot to be able to attempt 172 steals. So for me as a fan, I mean, Rickey was just everything.
And you just think of what he meant to all the kids in Oakland, right? I mean, he was a symbol, right? A symbol of hope, a symbol of what you can be. Yeah. I can't imagine, what it was like then. You grew up during that time. I mean, just talk about, seeing, the way someone like a Joe Morgan or a Frank Robinson was for their time. That's right. What Rickey Henderson was. If you're talking about 1979, early 80s.
Yeah, and that's exactly it. And we had, for me, growing up reading baseball books and learning stories and reading about Frank Robinson and Joe Morgan and Beta Pinson and these great players, Willie Stargell, who all came from the East Bay. And then this is Rickey. This is our guy. And Oakland Tech. He went to Oakland Tech. I knew nothing about Oakland Tech. After I learned about Rickey, I learned everything about Oakland Tech, right? And then even now, when you drive by Oakland Technical High School, that's Rickey. That's where Rickey went. It's so close you can touch it, sort of thing. And for us to have this homegrown player, and then you pair that with the return of Billy Martin back to the Bay Area. He was from Berkeley, and that's why I think Rickey and Billy were so tight, because they really felt like, even though they were very different to look at culturally, African American from Oakland, Italian American from Berkeley, but they felt the same. They felt kind of like underdogs. And Billy and Rickey just went together. And I don't think Rickey becomes the ball player that he became without Billy, because Billy just infused him with even more confidence than Rickey already had, and giving him the ability to go steal those bases. I mean, think about 1980 and Billy Ball, and teams weren't stealing as much yet. We're starting to see it come back a little bit with like Ron LaFleur in Montreal, but it wasn't quite that. Billy let him go. let them run and let that whole team run. And it just sit the Bay Area. Rickey and Billy, the Bay Area was back to being this baseball central. And it was, for me as a kid growing up, it was just the best.
Yeah, and everybody forgets that he was also thrown out more than anybody else.
Oh, yeah.
So there is that you've got to allow this guy to not only be successful, you got to allow him to fail. And that's really tough for coaches in any sport, right? It's like, oh, we love when Steph Curry makes X amount of three-pointers. Well, guess what? He's going to miss a lot of threes too. But you've got to allow it to happen. You've got to allow him. And there are some coaches, and let's face it, in sports, people can be very conservative, and they try, hey, I like when you do it, but I don't want you to fail. I don't want you to get caught. It's a great point. Billy Martin had to be like, hey, listen, I know he's going to steal a lot. I also know he's going to get thrown out, but I've got to live. I got to live with the negative because the positive's going to way outweigh the negative.
Yeah. For the most part, and we've seen this the last couple of years, the stolen base itself really doesn't add that much to run scoring. It's fun to watch, right? Ellie De La Cruz running wild and everything. But on a whole, the leading to runs or being thrown out. Outs are too important. That's what all the analytic people will say. And it will not lead to a run. And that's where Rickey was so different, because Rickey's stolen bases led to runs. Because it wasn't only, as you talked about, the pressure that he put on the defense and everybody. It was stealing second, and then any ball in play, he's at third base, and the next ball in play, he scores. It was a Rickey rally. That's all it took. And I think Billy Martin saw it right away with an 80 team that, didn't have a lot of power. He had Tony Armas, which was great. Dwayne Murphy had not lived into his power yet. He needed to do more to score runs. And, Billy knew nothing about analytics. Nobody knew anything about analytics at that point. But he did know that when Rickey ran, Rickey scored. And that is why he was such a tremendous offensive force. So much different than the guys today. Remember when Starling Marte joined the A's?
Yeah.
And he was stealing, and he was very successful. I think he stole his first 23 or 24 in a row. They didn't lead to a lot of runs because he would just get stopped there. Next guy would hit a pop-up or a fly ball to center. There was no movement after he stole second base. That was the difference in Rickey Henderson to stolen base guys today. It wasn't just stop at second. It was go to third. It was being able to score on balls barely in play. There was a game when he first came back in '89 where he's on second base. It's a ground ball to the shortstop, and he scored because he never stopped running. And he could feel that he knew that the shortstop's arm wasn't that strong. First baseman was going to be caught surprise. I'm going to score. I mean, he's just an offensive force that we haven't seen before or since.
From a historical point of view, there's the greats of the greats. Where is he amongst those, when we always like to say Mount Rushmore, where is Rickey Henderson amongst the greats of the greats?
I think he's in your top 10 to 15 players of all time. He is the greatest leadoff hitter of all time. So he's singularly already the greatest at something in this game. And that's saying a huge, huge amount. He was the greatest leadoff hitter of all time. And then you look at left fielders, and you look at, we talk Ty Cobb, you talk Barry Bonds, Carl Yastrzemski, Ted Williams, Rickey Henderson. They're all there. So in this top echelon of baseball players, I have him in the top 15. Again, greatest leadoff hitter of all time. And he was that while he was playing. And that's how you know you're good. When you're still playing and they're calling you the greatest leadoff hitter of all time, at that point, we got something going on. That's how much respect they had for Rickey, and they knew how devastating a force he was. I mean, you looked at his numbers and you look at his statistics. And in 1996, he goes to San Diego, the Padres, and has what is a bad year for him. And a bad year was 110 runs scored. I mean, and leading a team to the playoffs, a Padre team to the playoffs, and homering in the playoffs. A bad year is 110 runs. I mean, he was something else.
Yeah, there is one year, like it's like at the very end of his career, like with the Padres. I think it was with the Padres. He's 40 something years old, and he scores 70 runs. Let's see, it was he was 42 years old in 2001 with the Padres and scored 70 runs. He's 42 years old.
70 runs, steals 36 bases. He's playing with Tony Gwynn. That's, that's another thing. When you talk about the great players who talk about Rickey, and Tony Gwynn loved Rickey, loved him. And so Tony Gwynn's playing his last game, right? His final game as a Padre, and Rickey's sitting on 2,999 hits. And Rickey's telling Tony, I'm not playing today. This is your day. I'm not playing. And Tony would have none of it. He's like, Rickey, you're playing. You're getting that hit. This is going to be the greatest day in Padre history. Sure enough, Rickey gets the hit. Place goes crazy. Tony plays his last game. They're having the ceremony for Tony after the game. And all Tony Gwynn, summing up his great career, wants to do is talk about Rickey Henderson. I mean, that's unbelievable.
Now, as the age of analytics, and we look at the game, and we want our best players to hit earlier in the lineup. This started to change through the years, right? Like all of a sudden now, we started to see it with Mike Trout in Anaheim. Then the Blue Jays started doing it with Donaldson. Start my best guy. I don't want third or fourth. I want my best guy hitting second. I want him in there. If Shohei Ohtani this year hitting leadoff, Mookie Betts is hurt, move him up. So as we age in baseball and more analytics, will Rickey Henderson continue? It's hard to believe, but grow in stature of how great he is as we start to change the way we look at the way we do lineup construction.
I think so. I think you're going to look at his numbers and what he was putting up, and you're going, well, yeah, that's still better than the guys that we're seeing at the top of the order now, right? We talk about Shohei being a leadoff hitter, as he ended up taking that for the Dodgers. And he was a great example of power and steals, obviously, right? Tremendous. I don't think we're going to see him stealing bases anymore, right? He got injured in the World Series stealing in a base. He's going to go back to pitching. I think it's too much of a risk to keep running him. So for 1 year, Ohtani was unbelievable. Ichiro, when he was at the top of the order, right? He was that same sort of threat because of his speed at just hitting the ball in play. He could beat out a ground ball to short so easily. But he didn't have the power. Now we're starting to see guys with power and average, guys with thump hitting at the top of the order. That was already Rickey. So I think as we start seeing the progression of these great players hitting at the top of the order, we're going to look back at Rickey and go, well, Rickey already did that. You know, you look at that 1990 season where Rickey wins the MVP, right? He hits 325, had a chance to win the batting title in 1990. George Brett ends up winning it, but George Brett in the last week only takes 4 at-bats and basically sat on a 5-point lead. So Rickey probably would have won if George Brett decided to play that week. But Rickey's slugging percentage was .577 that year. I mean, Cecil Fielder thought he should have been the MVP. That's great. Rickey did what you did. He didn't hit, 50 home runs, but he scored 119 runs. He drove in. What did he end up driving in? 61. He did everything a power hitter could do from the leadoff spot, and that's taking away 1 at-bat a game where you didn't have a chance to drive in anybody but himself.
Paul Hembekidi sent this to Cody and I. 100 runs, 100 walks, 100 stolen bases in the modern era. Rickey Henderson did it in 80, 82, and 83. 100 runs, 100 walks, 100 stolen bases in a season. Pretty incredible. Feldy, happy holidays. Thank you for stopping by. We truly appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, guys. Appreciate it.
Take care. The great David Feldman, our A's historian, as Jose Canseco is going to join us next. Think about that. 100 runs, 100 walks, 100 stolen bases in the modern era since 1900. Rickey Henderson did that in 80, 82, and 83. 100 runs, 100 walks, 100 stolen bases in a season. It's this type of stuff that I'm just wondering if in time, or as we continue in baseball with analytics, you just start to look at what he did, no one will ever do again. Jose Canseco joins us here on A's Cast Live. Jose, welcome back to the program. Thank you for coming on.
Thank you, guys.
Obviously, a very tough day. I know how much Rickey Henderson meant to you as a person, and he meant to you in your career.
Yeah, I'm still in shock, obviously. I found out, I got a call on the 21st from a friend of mine, just kind of rambling on and saying, tell me it's not true what we heard about Rickey. And I said, what are you talking about? About him passing away. And I thought it was, very bad, very poor joke, or somebody making some ridiculous comment. And I think the first thing I did was I called Rickey. And, kind of hoping that he'd come out on the phone. And the first thing that came out was his voice, but it was a recording. It kind of tricks you. You think, okay, he's okay, but you realize it's a recording. And then hanging up. And if you grab his phone, I think you have a text from me saying, please let me know that you're okay. And of course, there was no reply after that. And then I start calling around and start verifying through the Oakland A's and through La Russa and through Dave Stewart. And they verified that Rickey had passed away. So it's unbelievable. It's shocking. We've lost a bunch of the Oakland A's from the 80s and early 90s. And I'm still trying to figure out what's going on. It's not Rickey, not the man of steel. You think he's going to live to be 200 years old, and still kind of speechless about it.
Yeah, I was mentioning, we saw him so much, especially during the Hall of Fame ceremony that you were part of, being inducted into the A's Hall of Fame. We had just seen him so many times. He looked as healthy as ever. Hell, he looked like he could still play. It's really shocking, but I think about you as a young player coming up and becoming a star player and being the MVP. When Rickey Henderson comes back to the A's for a second time to help you guys win a World Series, what was that like for your career to have a star like that show up as you're becoming a star?
I think people realize the greatness of Rickey Henderson on the field, but I don't think they realize who he was off the field. I mean, he treated me with so much kindness and respect, and talk about what a good person inside. I would hear these weird things about him, about being a hot dog and being this, but that was the media or other players that never even knew him that didn't understand his greatness. And obviously we all know his numbers, but as a person, amazing, laughing all the time, smiling, nothing would bother this guy. I mean, nothing. Bringing up players. Like I said, he treated me with a lot of respect and empathy and kindness. And, that's hard to find in superstar type quality players. My condolences to his family. We're definitely going to miss him. And I think I'm in shock. I really am totally in shock. And I mean, for me, that's hard to understand, but I still don't believe it. And I think people have to understand what a nice, humble, if you got to know him, what a really good-hearted person he was.
It's a phenomenal point, and it's something that so many of his former teammates, and when you play for 9 different organizations, you're going to play with a lot of guys. Everybody keeps saying it, like what Rickey Henderson meant to them in their careers, what he was like in the clubhouse, how he was such a good guy. He was so generous to everybody. Like, not everybody thinks about that with Rickey Henderson because of the greatness and the swagger and all of that. Really, when you dig down deep, Rick all the way down, Jose, to where he's 46 years old playing for the San Diego Surf Dogs, Rickey was just a great dude and loved being around the guys and loved being in the clubhouse and playing cards.
Yeah, I think people don't understand this, but Rickey loved baseball. He had an addiction to the game. That was his world. That's what he wanted to do. That's where he felt safe. That's where he felt happy. That's where he felt young. And, I remember going back to the Coliseum when we had the last day of the Reggie Jackson Celebrity softball game, hitting in that stadium again, and Rickey was there. He looked great. He looked young. He looked vibrant. He was laughing, was cracking jokes. And me going back to the Coliseum made me feel 30 years old again, even though I'm 60. And I know that when I retired from baseball, and I played independent baseball in my 50s, and that's what I had, that it wasn't even about the money. It was about the addiction of baseball, the addiction of staying young, the addiction of youth, the camaraderie. We just loved the game in a simple form. Of course, it's changed nowadays, but we definitely loved the game in a simple form. And, I think if you played with Rickey, if you understood Rickey, if you saw what his personality was, his character, his kindness to players, to myself, really, Rickey was a very humble person. He was just funnier than hell. He would crack jokes, and we would laugh, and people would understand outside the game. Oh, no, he's a hot dog. He says, no, he's the best player in the world, best leadoff hitter, one of the top 5 best players in history. And I don't think people understood that. Listen, if you played against him, you hated him because he disrupted the game. He took over the game. He was one of the most dominant players in the history of the game. But if he played with you, oh my God. I can remember, Rickey leading off. I'm hitting third. He's on base, and I'm just thinking, okay, when's he going to steal? What's he going to do? What's going to happen here? Oh, but here we go, Rickey rally. And I don't think people give him enough credit to where his baseball IQ was genius. I don't think people understood the way how he figured out pitchers, timing mechanisms, pitches to steal on. For example, if I was hitting, he knew I'd get a lot of breaking ball. So he'd take breaking ball counts, and then he'd get me a fastball to hit. There's no way I would have those great years of all those RBIs without Rickey being in the lineup.
Oh, so, it had to be incredible. He was always in scoring position for you.
He was always in scoring position. I remember sometimes, okay, Rickey's on, easy RBI for me. I'm going to let him steal second. I'm going to let him steal third. I'm going to hit the ball the other way. So I think he made, personally, my life as a baseball player easier to let him take over the game and me just be do something simple. Hit the ball the other way, put the ball in play, choke up, hit a fly ball. And I'll tell you, when he's on your team, you're going to win. You have a winning team. You're going to have a winning season. But beyond that, his stats speak for themselves. I think people have to know his character, who he was. This man was the funniest guy he used to call me Hosey. Some of the players call me Hosey. He was the funniest guy in the clubhouse, where you would just wait for him to say something, his smile. And if you were down, his jokes would just bring you up. It was just amazing. And he always treated me with respect and kindness. I will never forget that.
And what he meant for you guys in 1989, after the disappointment in 88, it kind of changed everything.
It changed everything. He just brought an atmosphere to the game. We knew Rickey came in, and obviously nobody knew exactly what to expect. Nobody really knew if we get a new player. And he just fit in so perfect. He just fit in so smooth. He was the perfect piece of the jigsaw puzzle that we really needed, the catalyst, the guy who was going to disrupt the game for the pitchers, the guy who was going to take a lot of pressure off myself and McGuire, meaning we had to do less because he was doing so much more. So as that part, it was amazing. And of course, in the clubhouse alone, just the camaraderie that Rickey, I think people who know Rickey understand what I'm saying, how funny this man was. It was unbelievable how he would bring up the clubhouse. How he would just say the funniest Rickeyisms, as I would say. And talk about, I've never even heard or seen Rickey say anything bad about a player, do anything in a negative way in the clubhouse. It was more like fun, bring up the players, back up the players, support the players. And like I said, for me personally, being a young player, he treated him with a lot of respect and a lot of kindness.
Jose, thank you so much for your time this morning. We truly appreciate it. Happy holidays, and we'll talk to you in the new year.
Thank you, guys. Take care.
The great Jose Canseco right here on A's Cast Live. I think about all the names that we're having on here today, and I think about the bobbleheads that we have with Rickey Henderson, think of Jose Canseco. It's tough to lose your heroes. It really is. And it happens in time. It's just shocking at the age of 65, and he was about to be 66 on Christmas Day. I started the show talking about how we'd seen Rickey so much this season And especially after the All-Star break, to think that he's not here, it's hard to believe. And, I think Terry Steinbach's going to join us here in a few moments. I think I've told this story before. The first time I met Rickey Henderson, it was at Candlestick Park. He was playing for the Mets. And I was getting him for a pregame show. I was so he's a star. So anytime that you went up to a star, you never knew, especially as a young guy, you never knew how that person was going to be. And you're always a little worried, right? Because you always want to keep these guys on this pedestal, this greatness. And if they're a jerk to you, you feel it's awful. You always want them to be who you think they're going to be. And if you remember the old at Candlestick Park, you may not have a clue, but the home and the road in baseball, the clubhouses faced each other. So you could just go from one to another. I remember going in there. Rickey Henderson just got done playing cards, and I went up, introduced myself, and asked Rickey if I could get a few moments with him. And Rickey was awesome. It was so refreshing, because there have been guys that especially early in my career, that were just, a young guy, and they not only would say no, they would belittle you too. Rickey Henderson was great, and I'll never forget. So Rickey's sitting down, I'm standing up, and right next to us was Glenn Allen Hill. And this is how old school this is. As I start doing the interview with Rickey Henderson, Glenn Allen Hill fires up a cigarette, and he's standing. So Rickey's sitting in his locker, I'm standing up, I'm interviewing him, and Glenn Allen Hill is right to my right, standing up, leaning up against his locker, just listening to the interview, smoking a cigarette in the clubhouse. I mean, you think back on that, wasn't a big deal then, but you feel like a guy lit up a cigarette in the clubhouse right now. And I never will forget this, is when we were done, and of course I called him Mr. Henderson. Glenn Allen Hill, puffing on the cigarette, looks at us and goes, "That was good S-bomb." I'll never forget that. That was good S-bomb. Yeah, right? And it was hilarious. I was so nervous, but now that I think about that, I'm older. It was a really cool moment. Rickey Henderson, a New York Met. We were talking about, what he means in the game of baseball, what he means to this Mets team as they were winning, and, his time with the A's. And Glenn Allen Hill was firing up a cigarette while we were doing the interview. Unbelievable. But the way that, and it's happened with Steph Curry too. I think about Steph Curry so we can modernize it. When Steph first came up, but after the ankles, right? After they got the ankle situation worked out, Steph was known as a hot dog. Right? There were other teams that didn't like Steph Curry. There were other fan bases that didn't like Steph Curry. And then as you continue to show your greatness, people accept it. It takes when you've got swag, it's almost like, okay, you're going to do it, and then you got to really prove your greatness, and then everybody accepts it and loves it. It's just the way it works. Like when Deion first came up, not everybody loved Deion's swagger. But after a while, you realize this guy's one of the greatest cornerbacks, if not the greatest cornerback of all time. He becomes prime time. So early on swag, not everybody loves it. But then once you prove your greatness, then they start loving your swagger. But man, the swagger that he brought. Do we have Terry? Terry, welcome back to A's Cast Live. It's good to have you on. I wish it was under better circumstances as we remember your teammate, your friend Rickey Henderson. I mean, I'm sure you're probably still in shock. It's hard to believe that he is no longer with us.
Yeah, we are. I mean, I got the call Friday night, from Carney calling me, and at this point, it's still hard to believe. I mean, you look at Rickey, we all saw him, the last months of the Coliseum, and was always in great shape. Never would have guessed that any health issues such as pneumonia, would have been one that would, would have done Rickey in.
He was such a special player. I was just talking about, the swagger that he brought to the game. And it's happened throughout time. Guys have swagger. They're young. Not everybody loves it. But once they've earned and they've become greatness, then everybody loves you, right? Just talk about, what he meant to you guys as he had been in A, gone to New York, and now they bring him back. And when you're bringing Rickey Henderson back, you're not bringing back a young kid. You're bringing a true superstar to help you get over the top.
Absolutely, and I got to see it both ways. When he was still with the Yankees, I was an up-and-coming catcher and had to try to figure out how to keep Rickey off the bases, number one. Number two, if he got on, how to throw him out, how to keep him from raising havoc, against our pitcher, against our defense, and everything else. But, that 89 season was special, obviously. When we lost the World Series in 88, we had a lot of pieces of that puzzle were there. But when there was rumor that we might be able to get Rickey halfway through the 89 season, I mean, we were ecstatic. And then, Sandy Alderson, the Haas family, Tony, they pulled the plug on that deal and made it happen. And next thing you know, we got Rickey in our locker room. And I mean, what a boost that was, mentally for us and physically to have, ultimately the best leadoff hitter in the game, be part of that already solid team that we had. And, without a doubt, that was a major key for us winning that World Series in 89.
So as a catcher, I was trying to explain this. What he did and how many guys on the defense, because we talk about guarding 90 feet. So he's affecting the pitcher. He's affecting the pitcher because the pitcher's got to throw over. The pitcher is now not throwing with full conviction to home plate to get the hitter. The pitcher is worried about how fast he's going to home plate. Basically, you had to develop something to get the ball faster to home plate to help the catcher. It really was, okay, we're going to have to use the slide step, not some of the time, now all the time. That can alter a pitcher's mechanics. You've got catchers behind home plate. You're freaked out about your stats and not being able to throw him out, right? Now you've got the middle infielder, whether it's second baseman or shortstop, they're starting to cheat to second base because they got to take the throw. So now they're opening a hole there in the infield. You got the right fielder thinking about, well, what if Carney Lansford shoots the ball into right field? I got to try and get Rickey at third. I mean, just talk about all the different people on defense Rickey Henderson is affecting just being on first base.
Oh, Chris, you nailed it. And the one thing I think you forgot is the manager and the bench coach, because as soon as Rickey gets on first base, it's kind of their job, it's kind of to indicate to us, me, the catcher or catchers, what do we want to do here? Do we want to step off? Do we want to throw over? Do we want to pitch out? Do we want to hold? And that alluded to what you were saying, how much it messes up the pitcher. And ultimately, I think so many times what happened, and you touched on it, is that the whole defense is so focused on Rickey, all right, that what we forget to do is execute the pitch. Next thing you know, like you're saying, Carney Lansford batting behind Rickey, all of a sudden, boom, he shoots the hole. Or Carney had some power. They're trying to throw fastballs to give the catcher and the defense a chance to throw Rickey out. We always had a good fastball hitter behind Rickey. Carney, was a great fastball hitter. So he got the opportunity to get a lot of fastballs that he could drive throughout, the whole field. And now instead of just having Rickey on second, now maybe we have Carney on second, Rickey on third.
So you have a game plan going in on how to get hitters out, strengths, weaknesses, all of that. Okay, now Rickey Henderson's on first base and you're the catcher. How much would that change? You know what you want to do to get the hitter out, but now Rickey's on first. How much did that change how you called the game?
It changed a lot. You got to throw one more variable in there. What's the score? I mean, if we're up by 3, 4, 5 runs, Rickey, have at it. I'm not going to waste my time on you. You're going to steal second anyway. You're probably going to steal third. I want to focus on getting the hitter out, getting the next 3 guys out. Let's say Rickey was a leadoff guy, and we'll move on after that. I don't want to waste, my time, the defense's time. I mean, that's another thing you didn't touch on. If we're doing all these step-offs, throwovers, pitch-outs, all this junk, what we're doing is putting our defense to sleep. They're on their toes. All of a sudden, it's a step off. Well, they get back. Okay, the defense gets back on their toes. Oh, we throw over to first. They come back. Pretty soon, they're not as sharp as they would be if we got a good pace going on the game. So if the game's tight, if let's say Rickey's a tying run or the go-ahead run, completely changes the whole dynamics of things. Now we do have to do all that stuff. We do have to throw over. We do have to step off. We might take trips to the mound. I know Rickey shared with us and Tony one of the things that he, being a great base stealer, and other great base stealers they hated the hold. Because they would time things. The pitcher would, come set 1,000, 2, 1,000, throw, get set 1,000, 2, 1,000, throw. Rickey and other great base stealers would time that 1,000, 2 gone. Now as a catcher, you have no chance of throwing that guy out. So he shared with us the thing that screwed him up the most is if we could have our pitcher hold for maybe 3 to 4 to 5 seconds, then deliver the ball at home plate, it messed up his timing. So we tried to do that quite often when Rickey was on first, especially in a situation that mattered.
No one stole third. Obviously, no one stole any of the base as much as he did, but stealing third for a catcher, especially with the right-handed hitter up, you're not going to have the pitcher can't hold the runner the same way as close as he does the guy second. So now you got Rickey Henderson out there, like we say he's with the Yankees. He's got this monstrous lead out at second base. You can't hold him the same. And now the throw to third, it's not as far, but usually you got to throw over or around the right-handed hitter. What was that like?
Well, 100%. And Rickey also shared with us that he said stealing third was one of the easiest bases to steal because all the effort, all the attention was put on him when he was at first. I mean, everything that we just talked about. Now Rickey gets to second. The pitcher takes a big sigh of relief. Oh, well, we did our best. We couldn't keep him at first. He's at second. The manager takes a sigh of relief. Well, we did our best. He's at second. The middle infielder is like, well, he's at second. There's nothing we can do about it. More often than not, Rickey would steal on the very, very next pitch. He would steal third to catch the defense, the catcher, the manager, the bench coach to catch those guys sleeping. So that's one thing that he shared with us that worked for him very much so. And then the other thing that you alluded to, yeah, I mean, you get like Dave Winfield up and Rickey's on second. I can't throw over him, So you either got to go, come out in front or go behind. And then again, your third baseman, he's kind of got to hold his ground because Winnie was known to pull the crap out of the ball. We don't want to have guys standing on third and then Winfield dribbles one through. So again, getting back to everything besides the obvious that Rickey created. When he was on base, those are the things that we constantly had to talk about. We constantly had to do. And it was, I'm just going to say it, he was a pain in the ass, when he was out there because everything you had to do to try to keep him from scoring.
Was there ever a player you played against or played with where so much of the game revolved around him?
No. And I'll just say that because you might have base stealers, Devon White, had that excellent stride. He was phenomenal from home to second, first to third and stuff like that. But I never saw a complete package. Rickey, if you got sloppy with him at the plate, he'd take you deep. Then if you pitched Rickey too tight, he had a good eye. He walked. Either way, the guy's going to be on base or had scored a run. A lot of these other great base stealers may have not had the offensive capabilities that Rickey had. Definitely didn't have the top-notch base stealing abilities, that Rickey had. And then, look, come on, let's face it. Let's throw Rickey's personality out there, his swagger, kind of like I caught what you guys were talking about before I came on. I mean, awesome. Rickey would step out there and, people loved him, people hated him. Either way, he was going to get a reaction, from the fans, from the crowd, from the other team, from his pitcher, a nod, from the catcher. Hey, he was just that elite type of player. There's Hall of Famers that are out there. There's Hall of Famers that have done great things. And then you mentioned Rickey, and he just seemed to be a click or 2 clicks or a click and a half above some of these very, very elite Hall of Famers. And that just goes to show, what a great player he was.
Yeah, you think about your team already has these great players, and then you bring the elite of the elite back home. And bringing him back home was like just such, thinking back on it, what just a great fit it was to bring the elite to a bunch of great players to take you over the top in '89.
Absolutely. And you can't go without saying we got to, Tony did a great job, La Russa. We had all these wild personalities out there. You got Canseco doing what he was doing. You got Rickey's personality. You got Dave Parker's personality. You got Dave Hindu, smiling away. You got Stu. And Tony did such a great job of trying to keep everybody with the same objective, and that was to win. He didn't care what you were doing, what was going on, as long as it didn't affect his team, as long as it didn't affect the team's ability to win. Ricky, go ahead and do your thing. I remember that one year, I don't know what year it was, we brought the wheelbarrow of money at spring training, you know, to Ricky. Everybody pitched in their dollars. You know, what a great icebreaker, man. You know, here it is. You know, I mean, we got the greatest player ever, you know, kind of a little upset because he was only the highest paid player for a couple hours, you know, and then someone else got more money. So, I mean, they always found a way, you know, to have fun, but always once we got between those white lines, you know, once it was time to play ball, that umpire yelled play ball. They always found a way that, hey, we're here to win games. And when we talked about that, the egos kind of got checked on the side, as long as everybody was doing their job to play to win.
Let's end on this. What was it like when you left the ceremonies and it's been some time to really let it soak in that you're an A's Hall of Famer?
Oh, I mean, it's taken quite a while. I mean, it's still numbing at the time. And then, you know, obviously the photos that we took, the great memories that family and friends that were with me have shared, and we still get together with a lot of those. And it came time to do our Christmas card. And obviously we had some of the A's Hall of Fame pictures in there. And again, so when Mary and I put that Christmas card together, it was like, it just sparked it again, you know, like, oh my gosh, you know, and to be with the elite people that are there. And then, you know, unfortunately, you know, now we don't have Ricky, you know, to be part of that anymore, but it was very special. And it's something that, you don't play the game to get into the Hall of Fame. You know, you play the game for the love of the game. You play the game to win. And it's not till after you're out of the game and all of a sudden statistical information starts coming out. Hey, you were this. So someone just told me today I did one of these. They said you threw Ricky out 5 out of 9 times.
Really?
Yeah. And I was like, really? I said the same thing. I'm kind of like, well, dang, I know. Now I kind of wish Ricky was alive because I might have to drop that on him next time I see him.
Well, he was such a special player. Thank you so much for remembering your friend and the accomplishments you guys had together. Happy holidays. Congratulations again on getting into the A's Hall of Fame. And we'll talk to you in the new year.
Yeah, and I just want to add one thing too, you know, for all our listeners out there. I mean, this is really a good example, a sad example that athletes are really human beings. I think sometimes, you know, we get put on this pedestal and everything like that. And I just encourage everybody out there to really think about, you know, Ricky's family. His mom is still alive, obviously his wife Pam, his daughters, and keep all them in your prayers at this time, because, you know, no matter all the accolades that we're talking about right now, all the great accomplishments Ricky did, yada yada yada, he still was a human being, and unfortunately he's not going to be there for some people very, very close and dear to their hearts.
Well said. Take care, Terry.
Thank you, guys. Have a Merry Christmas.
A's Hall of Famer Terry Steinbach. And yes, I mean, think of what Christmas meant to them as it was Rickey Henderson's birthday. He'd be 66. Coming up next, Shooty Babitt is going to join us. Shooty grew up with him, grew up around him, grew up idolizing him. He'll join us next right here on A's Cast Live.
Harold Reynolds was on A's Cast Live and described the phone call he got from Rickey Henderson in 1987.
You know, Ricky's always talking in the third person, and I'm sure you guys have got to know him a little bit. And so, I mean, he may be playing cards and they go, Ricky got a sweet hand. Ricky getting really sweaty right now. You know, everything's third person with him. And so that year, 1987, it's the only time in the 80s that Ricky did not win a stolen base title. And he's stealing at that time like 100 bases a year. So I ended up winning that year with 60. I think Ricky got hurt in May or something like that, and he already had 30 in May. So I win on the last day. Willie Wilson had 59. I had 59. I steal a bag. Willie Wilson doesn't. I'm the greatest of all time. You know, I win the title, right? So I get home the next day. Season's over, and my phone rings. No caller ID in those days. Hello, Henderson here. Hey, Rick, what's going on? I'm thinking he's calling to congratulate me. He goes, 60 stolen bases? You ought to be ashamed. Ricky has 60 at the All-Star break. Click, and hung up the phone.
Oh, God, that is so good. That is so good. Oh, man.
So years later, he goes into a Hall of Fame in Cooperstown, and, you know, Ricky and I are tight. he signs a picture for me, and it has, stolen base champ Rickey Henderson. I love it. It's on my wall at work.
To listen to the full interview and much more, go to athletics.com/A'sCast.
A's Cast Live continues from the studio. Here's Chris Townsend.
Cool thing talking to Terry Steinbach about just how much one player can affect everybody on the field. And we'll get into that with Shooty Babitt, as not only we think of Shooty is broadcasting, Shooty growing up around the great Rickey Henderson, but just from the scouts' point of view. Shooty, a tough day today, a tough couple days. I know how much Rickey Henderson meant to you as a friend and someone that you've been around for a good part of your life. My condolences to you. Very, very, obviously, very tough for everyone.
First of all, thanks for having me today, Tony. It's definitely been a difficult couple of days. I think I would be remiss if I didn't first say condolences and prayers to Bobby Henderson, the matriarch of that family, Pamela Henderson, the wife of Rickey Henderson, and all his beautiful daughters and sons, not sons, but brothers and nieces and grandchildren. There's a host of people that really needed Rickey, the man, in their life, and he's gone today. And Fred Atkins, Rickey's sidekick, one of the sweetest, nicest gentlemen, loyal men that you'll ever run. I'm praying for you today, Fred, because I know the type of man you were for Rickey. And to all the Oakland A's fans, the Oakland A's organization, for doing such a tremendous job of rolling it out there the last couple of years like you have. Dave Cavill making sure that field was named after Rickey. So many times Hall of Famers die and never get an opportunity to be celebrated in the way that they should be. And Rickey left a lot on the table, Our community, the city of Oakland, the living legend that Rickey was, all the players that played against him, with him, competed against him, looked up to him. I'm praying for you today, too, because we all lost our hero. And you and I, Tony, we got a chance to spend a lot of time around Rickey. And, yeah, you can talk all day. You don't have enough shows to talk about how great he was as a player. But to see a man walk through a stadium in which he did things that nobody else ever did and will do, and walk through the stands and wave and kiss babies and sign autographs and sit with people and talk and just be a real person. We all lost a family member. And I'm just thankful that I'm getting an opportunity to express how grateful and blessed that I was to not only have played with Rickey, against Rickey. First met him as a 14-year-old. They brought him over for a North-South All-Star game when we were 14. And when Rickey walked into the park, I was never in awe in anybody of a man in my life, of my father. But when I saw Rickey walk onto the field, I knew he was different. I had nothing seen him pick up a ball or do anything else, but I knew he was different. And those of us that got a chance to be around him, not just a baseball player, but he was a different person. And, man, it's been a difficult – I'm not here to be personal or selfish about this, because there's so many people that deserve an opportunity to speak on his behalf and their relationship with him. But I knew how special of a friend he was, but now that he's gone, I'll get the chance to understand even more. But, man, yeah, it's been a tough couple of days, and he will be missed dearly.
I think you said it best. We can talk about the numbers, but we all know about that. I think what's so important today is for people to understand really what he meant to people, just how real of a dude he was. And I think about like Raiders, before I was doing the sideline thing where we would sit, Rickey Henderson would always come up through our section. You say, "What's up, Rick?" And he'd say hi to everybody. And then he'd go up into the West Side Club, and he'd be hanging out in the West Side Club with people. He was such a people person. Here was this Babe Ruth-like superstar that could go to Raider games and hang out with people. He could go anywhere. And Shooty, I was trying to really tell people how much when Rickey Henderson walked into a room, the room just absolutely lit up.
You get an opportunity to be around some Hall of Famers, people who have done tremendous things in life and in sports. And you don't even want to be in the same room with them because they're so full of themselves. There's not enough room for you in it. But when Rickey, we'd go up in that suite, and like Bip used to talk about, them Rickey wings were spread all over the room and people are laughing and having a good time. I will miss those days more than anything that I've missed watching him on the field. And let me tell you something. When they talk about somebody on television that you don't bend over to get your food or your popcorn or your drink, when Rickey was playing, he was one of those dudes. So you're absolutely right, Tony. And those people that didn't know him, that spoke negatively, that did not know, you were wrong. You were just, it's sad that you didn't get the opportunity to know the real guy. But man, he will be loved and missed for so long, man. I mean, it's just, I don't know, man. I've lost parents. I know people who have lost kids. I know how difficult these times can be. So some things you just can't compare it to. But man, Tony, you know, we were just together last month at the Coliseum playing in the last softball game. Stu and Rickey and Barry and you name it. Everybody was there. We were just, it was a big softball barbecue. Do you hear me? We had a great time, and Rickey looked as healthy as a 10-year-old boy. But it just goes to show you, when a man upstairs get ready to make a move, ain't a defense in the world. And when your time comes, it's your time. And anybody that's listening or watching, just remember that all of our day is coming. And we just hope and pray that people are sitting here talking about us in a positive light, not just because what we accomplished in life, but the type of person that they meant to you. And man, it's a gut chuck. You and I have been talking about going to play golf when the holiday's over. Man, look here, bro. Don't wait too long. You know, don't wait to hug your family. Don't wait too long to tell people you love them. Don't do it. And you know me, Tony, I'm not a negative person. I believe in positivity. My brother told me a long time ago, if you want negativity or if you don't put it in the atmosphere. And they want to know why you're always so happy around the park. One thing, because there's no league bigger. You know that. But man, we got too much to be thankful for on an everyday basis. And when things like this happen, it only makes you realize that more. So when you get ready to complain about the small things, the little stuff, man, keep it to yourself, because somebody else got a bigger problem than you do.
Sometimes maybe players really don't realize how much they affect not only the people around them, but the way the kids look up to them. And to me, just learning over the years how big of a symbol to especially kids in Oakland Rickey Henderson was, you know, like what you can be, striving for excellence and what you can try and be. Rickey, a lot of people, and obviously you grew up around him, with him, playing against him, and you've known him for so long, but just talk about, as you got older, how you saw how Rickey affected the youth in the community.
Well, I'm one of the blessed, fortunate, and lucky ones to get an opportunity to play professionally. Mr. Jim Gwynn took a chance on me, same guy that drafted Rickey, same guy that drafted Clydell Washington. And he took a chance on me in the 25th rounds. There is a host and plethora of guys in this community that were way better than I was and did not get an opportunity. And I still have my pajamas on because I haven't had the strength or the will to get out to bed, because I've been returning texts and phone calls from, I can't tell you how many former players, how many guys in the community that I scouted, guys that I signed, guys that wanted to be like Rickey, guys that Rickey inspired to just be the best, because they all wanted to be like him. And it's not often that you have someone that you can look up to. And I think when they start talking about the lack of African-American players in the league these days, well, back in the day, there were so many guys, not many like Rickey, but there were so many that gave you something to dream about, because you saw somebody that looked like you. There was somebody that you felt you could be like. Well, if it was Rickey, then you were reaching for the sky. And that's what Rickey made each and every one of us do, is reach as high as we possibly could. Because if we ever reached as high as we could, we would never get to the level that he was. But he set the standard for all of us. And man, you should hear some of the cap in the game, and some of the guys are sitting, and all of them sitting pictures, popping their collar, and the swag and the love, and how we all wanted to be like Rickey. So his legacy, it will live forever. We have an opportunity and a responsibility as men, women. I'm not excluding anyone here, and pardon me, but we have a responsibility to make sure that we take our time and explain to them who Rickey Henderson was, and not just the best base stealer of all time, but probably in the top 5, if not top 4 baseball players to ever put the uniform on.
We just went over it with Terry Steinbach from the catcher's perspective. I want to kind of get into it with you from a scout's perspective. When you watch one player, we're talking about how he affects the pitcher, how the pitcher handles Rickey at first base, how the pitcher delivers the ball to home plate. Maybe he doesn't have the same conviction because he's so worried about Rickey. Now he's slide stepping. He's altering his mechanics. You got catchers don't want to call certain pitches because they know Rickey's going to steal on them. They're worried about their stats. You got middle infielders who have to cover second base as he's stealing. That's opening holes. You got outfielders worried about if Carney's going to shoot it into right field and I got to keep Rickey. He's affecting one player is affecting the entire defense. As a scout, talk about that and how many guys you've ever seen really do that other than Rickey Henderson.
Well, as a scout, the one thing that I love right away is to see how does a player impact the game. What does he do every day that he can bring to the game that changes the way everybody else plays? And before Rickey even took the field, he was in everybody's head. If it wasn't the catcher, it was the pitcher, it was the outfielder, it was the third base. I better move up quicker. I better play shorter. I better play shallow. I better challenge. I better slide step, like you said. I better throw over. Can you imagine if he was a base stealer today? He would steal 500 bases a year because you'd have no way of getting him out. But that's the type of athlete that Rickey didn't lose in anything. If you walked into the clubhouse before the games and big what refrigerators, that's a wash machine refrigerator down there. Rickey 2 months ago down there bragging about how he beat everybody in baseball in dominoes. You can't beat me in dominoes. It wasn't dominoes, it was pool, it was ping pong. The man was just a great athlete. You know the football player he was. People compared him to Tony Dorsett. But as a scout and watching players and watching Rickey play, speed, you can't teach it. You can't stop it. You can only hope to contain it for a minute. And he had an ungodly gift that he learned how to tap into early in his life. He never was linked to steroids. He's the kind of dude that walked around in the clubhouse with his short drawers on so you could see that great ripped body of his. All he did was push-ups, sit-ups. He was just a natural physical specimen. And he's one of those kind of guys that had all the tools except arm speed, arm strength. But what he was able to do, what he was able to accomplish with his speed, what other guys couldn't do that could throw better than him, was cut the distance, get to the ball quickly, that spin move at the line. Heck, if you went to the A's game back in the 80s, they had a bat boy who tried to emulate everything Rickey did. People knew Calvin down there, left hand. Man, you'd have thought it was Rickey if you didn't know him. That was the kind of impact he had on everybody in the stadium, man. But he was the kind of player that you paid to go and see. And I think when it's that type of player, I think it says it for itself, man. But just look at the numbers, man. We're in a numbers industry. My mouth can't even, if I had 10,000 tongues, I couldn't even tell you about all the things that he did. But he's a scout's dream. Mr. Jim Gwynn drafted him in the 5th round. Not the first, not the second, not the sandwich, not the compensation pick, but the 5th round. You're going to tell me in them days it was 32 rounds? You're going to tell me there was 1,000 players better than Rickey? Huh? So I'm just, like I said, I'm honored and blessed and so lucky to have been so fortunate to be. How many times do you have a genuine person in your life that was the very best at what they did and they did not act like it? Or you couldn't tell, if you will. And I'll miss him, man. Just like you'll miss him, and just like everybody else that knew Rickey is going to miss him. And but the one thing that we won't miss, I don't care where the A's go, where we go to Sacramento, Las Vegas, the moon, Saturn. When they advertise that A's and talk about that history, you know who's going to lift that organization up, without a doubt.
You can have all the tools in the world, but you got to know how to use them. And he saw things, right? And the great ones maybe they're not always great on telling you why they were able to do it. They were just able to do it. And the way Rickey read pitchers, he understood the game. He was able to read all the different pitchers. I was watching this highlight reel. I mean, we watched so much stuff over the weekend. And when he got inducted to the Hall of Fame, they put him in Studio 42 there in New Jersey where MLB Network is. And he was with Barry Larkin and Harold Reynolds. And he's talking about watching the pitcher's elbows when he's leading off second. This isn't first base. We focus so much on first base. They were talking about leading off second. And he goes, well, however a pitcher is going to try, if he's going to spin move or he's going to do the leg kick, he was always watching. And Barry Larkin's like, I never thought of that. Like, he saw things. He had instincts. So it's like we could talk about, oh, he was ripped. Oh, he was shredded. He was fast. But you got to have the mind and you got to have the instincts. Rickey had that, and people don't talk about that enough.
You know, it's good to hear Barry Larkin say that because we spent so much time watching Rickey do what he did. And a lot of guys who were base stealers, they spent so much time trying to pick up what the pitcher did when he came over to first base, what his move was. And after my playing days, and I started teaching, coaching, and scouting, I'm trying to get even more educated, and I'm going to get educated from the best that ever did. And so I'm like, talk to me, man. What were you picking up on these pitches? How'd you pick up their moves so easy? Says Shooty. That's the problem. You know, people paying attention to the wrong thing. Because when a guy comes over the first base, he does the same thing every time. He varies what he does on a regular to come over and pick you up. I never thought about that. Just like Barry Larkin, never thought about it. You spend all the time about closing distance and open up wide and the toe angle and the shoulder tilt and the head tilt. You never thought about the thing because he only did that 1 or 2 times when he came over to pick you off. So there was one commonality in that move that he did when he tried to pick you off. And to be able to put his skill with his will along with his mentals, just like you're talking about, that's what separates you from the best. I've seen guys with so much speed score from second base on a base hit and go to jump in the dugout with their teammates and then near jump over the dugout because they just don't have the feel. They've got the speed, world-class speed, but they're not able to apply it. And I think you bring up a great point, and that is the separator for sure.
Well, and all the runs that he scored, you think about all these guys that score a lot of runs, they always need their teammates doing stuff. Rickey Henderson was the guy that scored the most runs also on just productive outs, sac flies, ground balls. You know, so many guys need the base hits, doubles for them to get around or someone to hit them in with a home run. Rickey Henderson was the one guy that scored a ton off productive outs.
And I don't think enough credit is given to the guys that hit behind Rickey. The Carney Lansford, Dwayne Murphy, who's a 30 home run guy, who's at one of the biggest, most bat speed in the game, had to sacrifice himself for the success of Rickey. And those things don't show up in the box scores. And there's some that we're not talking about that hit behind Rickey for other teams. But they knew if they got their job done, Rickey would get his done. I mean, when you have somebody say it's a Rickey run, everybody in the world knows what that is. A walk and 2 steals, a sac fly, ground ball, whatever the case may be, 1-0. And I'm sure Stu could tell it the best about how great it was to know when he took the mound at the Coliseum most of the time, he had a 1+something lead because of guys like Rickey.
You know, David Feldman was with us earlier today, and you just start thinking about Rickey Henderson and all the different things that he did. But a really good point was Billy Martin accepting that he's going to steal a lot of bases, but he's also going to get thrown out. And there's going to be the positives and the negatives, but the positive really outweighs the negative. If you would have had a super conservative manager at that time who would have put a governor on Rickey, you know, just talk about how early in his career, how important it was to Billy Martin say, go get it. Just go. And if you get thrown out, you get thrown out. Keep going. You know, like a shooter in basketball, keep shooting.
Yeah, it's going to be pretty hard for you to get me to say many positive things about that manager, but I'll keep it just for the respect of the show. Billy was a smart man. He knew he couldn't stop Rickey. I think Tony La Russa found that out early on too, because, he knew Rickey had the green light. Rickey ran on his own. Rickey was doing his thing. And, one day I think Tony wanted to kind of harness him a little bit, say, hey, Rickey, I know you've been doing your thing, but there are going to be some situations in the game where I'm going to have to control the run game. So if I do that, that means take is off. Go across my chest, take is off. Rick on first base, situation, getting ready, looking at the dugout, Tony La Russa, the white. First pitch, Rick gone, stole the second. Next pitch, Rick gone, still third. Rick scores, getting the dugout, and Tony La Russa say, well, Rickey, great and everything, but when I do that, mean take is off. He said, I thought you said take off. I took off. You wasn't stopping him. So it's like trying to put a lion in a cage. It's not going to happen. He's going to get out, and you don't stop things like that. You get out the way. And Billy, to answer your question, was smart enough to learn right away that even though Rickey said people saying Rickey was stealing bases when it didn't mean anything, can you tell me one of those bases didn't mean anything to Rickey? This is what that man was born to do, and that's how he made his living. And if you were a base stealer, I guarantee you weren't one of those people that said that.
And his love for the game, and I just have his baseball reference page up right now in front of me, and to think how productive he was as he got older. I mean, we're not talking about 130, 120, but what he did as he got into his late 30s, his early 40s, a mentor. Everybody talks about what a great teammate, what he was in the clubhouse, but still, even into his late 30s, I mean, he still led the league in stolen bases at 39. I was looking at this one year where he was 42 with the Padres. He still scored 70 runs. 70 runs at 42 years old. It was amazing how productive he was still late in his career. And what a great mentor he was.
He loved the game. He loved to talk the game. I can recall a time, and I asked Rick, I said, man, when you going to get this up, bro? I mean, really? I mean, when you going to start enjoying life off the field? He said, when they take the jersey from me. So I think it was about 50 when he's playing in the independent league, when they finally say that's enough. And I think from what I understand, he kind of argued with him a little bit then. I'm Rickey Henderson, greatest of all time. But it's like you love to do what you do, Chris Townsend, and it shows every day in your work. Some people just don't let their light shine. Rickey was as bright as any bright lights going down the street, and he didn't mind turning them on. And I think we all should take a minute and do the best we can to let our light shine, because at the end of the day, somebody's going to be sitting up here talking about us like we're talking about him, and we won't get a chance to tell him how much we appreciate watching what he did. But those that did, God bless you. And man, we had a hero taken from us, and we were blessed to have him. But man, oh man, you talking about one of a kind? When there are 9 zillion people in this world named Rickey, when you say Rickey, you know the one that comes to your mind. I think that's it all.
A lot of people are going to need you right now, Shooty. A lot of people are going to rely on you, and it's always tough because we know how close you were with him and what you mean inside our community. So you got to have big shoulders right now because a lot of people are going to rely on you because these are really tough times.
That's awfully kind for you to say, Tony. And it's a blessing to hear those words come from you. My dad always told me it's better for people to talk about you than to talk about yourself. And to have a responsibility that would carry some type of weight like that, I honor it and cherish it. And I'm glad to have that responsibility, but it's not easy. I'm thankful for the people that have been around me because they know how I am. And just the phone calls, man, it's tough. But hey, we all got this day coming.
Well, have a great Christmas. Happy holidays, my friend. We'll talk to you and we'll tee it up in the new year.
Thank you, my man. And always thank you, Tony, for giving me an opportunity to do this, what I do right here, because this is my life. And I know my mom and my dad are extremely proud of me today when they look down on me. So thank you. And Oakland, the Oakland A's organization, I can't thank you enough, over and over and over again, which I do all the time, and they know that. So thank you, Tony.
Be well, Shooty. The great Shooty Babitt. Yeah, I feel so much for these players and these guys that grew up with him. You know, when you talk about Shooty Babitt and you talk about Dave Stewart, and I know Bip's a little bit younger. Well, I don't know. It's Bip. How old is Bip? I don't think Bip's a little bit younger. But Bip was very close also, and I've known Bip for a long, long time.
61.
Yeah, he's a little bit younger. But, people that you grow up with, people that mean so much to you. I mean, these guys grew up with Rickey Henderson. And, when you're, obviously one of your buddies becomes this all-time great and but he's still your buddy. And, Rickey had the box at our games and everybody would go up and hang out with Rickey Henderson. It's so important today to really remember just what a cool guy Rickey Henderson was. Rickey Henderson knew he was great, but he was also one of the guys. He was somebody who would go play dominoes. He loved playing cards. It's one of the things about sports and all walks of life for all of us, right? We have our friends. And inside the clubhouse, your peers, your friends, you're a group of people that you have these special skills, and we play together. We travel together. Baseball, basketball, hockey are unique sports because of how much, like, football is completely different. Football, you travel, you have some preseason games, you have some road games, but you're not on the road like it is in baseball, basketball, and football. I mean, in these sports, you're traveling the country together. It's planes, it's hotels, it's buses. I mean, you're constantly with these guys from spring training, and that's why I incorporate basketball and hockey. It's not as many games, it's half, but it's a lot. But baseball, it's amazing the amount of time that you spend, that everybody spends together. And it's just not the players. It's the coaches. It's the trainers. It's everybody in the clubhouse. It's, like we're going to talk to Ken Korach. Do we have Ken Korach? I mean, Ken, it's hard to explain, but, when you're around these teams, you guys travel together. You're with each other more than you are with your significant other and your children. It's the bonds. So it's like remembering Rickey Henderson today as the player is so important, but also probably far more important is to have everybody talk about just what a great human being this guy was and how generous he was. And he cared so much about people. He was such a great guy.
It was, thanks, Tony. This had been a tough couple of days, and I was really moved by what Shooty said as I came on and was waiting to come on and hearing him, because we all know how close that they were for so many years, going back to their youth. And to think of the greatest player in the history of a franchise being from the community, and Rickey was part of Oakland, and I don't think he ever forgot that. I think that was one of the most endearing and enduring traits that Rickey had, was that he never forgot where he came from. And I can give you many examples of that. And you've been at the Coliseum for the great ceremonies that we've had over the years, and the dedication of Rickey Henderson Field at Oakland Tech on the 1st of April of 2008, when after Rickey stayed after, there were tons of people who came down from the community just to be with Rickey. And Rickey was the centerpiece of the ceremony, of course. And I remember telling him, because the A's had a game, of course, that night. It was the home opener. And telling him, Rickey nobody would blame you if you took off now, if you left, because what you've done has been above and beyond. And he said, I'm going to stay until I sign every autograph and take every photo, because these are the people that paid money to come watch me play. And so the link between Rickey and the community, that never ended, Townie, and that was a beautiful thing.
Yeah, he walked into a room and the room lit up. There was no question about it. And once he got going, that's where you would see what a people person he was, because he would make sure everybody who wanted time, everybody who wanted, they got it. And that's something like how many times, like I just mentioned, we did the Comerica event in August, and he stayed well past what he was supposed to stay. Everybody got to take, whether it was everybody was given a baseball, whether it was to get an autograph or take a picture. And there was something about him that once he got going and he was with people, he really took the time to make sure he was a little bit of a pleaser that way. And mega superstars normally aren't like that.
I remember when Bill King, of course, posthumously received the Frick Award at Baseball's Hall of Fame in 2017. And we had this wonderful reception for all the people that wanted to be there for Bill. The evening that Kathleen, of course, accepted the Frick on behalf of Bill. A bunch of us were sharing our memories of Bill and having something to eat. And Rickey had been invited. He hadn't shown up yet. And there were these big doors. And I remember about a half hour into the proceedings, the doors swung open, and in walked Rickey with a big smile on his face. And it made the night. It was almost better that he made the grand entrance then than if he had been there when the whole thing started. Because once Rickey walked in, like Shooty said, he was the light. The light went off, and it made the night even more special that it was the perfect entrance for Rickey. And I guess it was Rickey being Rickey.
Yeah. Well, and to be mentioned as one of the greats, and condolences to you and your father. What a life that your father had. And it was always great when we talked about your dad, and your dad had living as long as he did, was able to see so many of the greatest players. And when we would talk about your dad comparing Stan Musial to Freddie Freeman, to be Rickey Henderson and to be one of the all-time, it's one thing there's so many great players in the Hall of Fame. There's so many great players that get close to the Hall of Fame, but then we just recently lost Willie Mays. There's that next level. And that was the one thing, like when you were around Rickey, when you interviewed Rickey, you knew you were around somebody that was the great. He was a part of the greats of the great. And there's not many of them.
That's right. There may be 10 or 12 that you could say, Townie, that were among the greats of the great. And that's really well put. And he had a personality to match it, which meant that he was even more larger than life. There are legends who are Hall of Famers because they were so great. And Rickey was so great, but his personality was kind of part of the whole package. And, thanks for mentioning my dad. I thought about my dad a lot the last couple of days. When he passed away, he was 105. And not that you ever fully accepted, but we were prepared for it. He's 105. He was really struggling. But Rickey at 65, I think it's all the more shocking because, as you know, Townie, he was at the Coliseum a lot this year, especially down the stretch. He was in Seattle for the last weekend of the season up there, and he always looked so great. It's one of the reasons that I'm still in shock, because if you saw Rickey in September, late September, and the old joke was, Rickey looks like he could still play, and that Rickey probably thought he could still play, and he was 65. And I think that makes it even more difficult to accept.
There's no doubt about it. We were around him a lot at the end of the season, and that's why it was so shocking to get the phone call on Friday. You just couldn't believe it. It was just Ken, the one thing that also that I that you got to see a lot, I'd like you to talk about, is just how Rickey was with the young players. He loved players. He loved the young guys. He liked talking to these guys. He liked going down and just being in the clubhouse again. But it just, for as long as he played, then as long as he was around the game, clearly loved the game, but he loved the player. He didn't big league these young kids whatsoever. No. He wanted to help them.
Yes. Although you had to warn them if you played cards with him. So I remember when he joined the A's in '98, Art Howe was managing the club. And I think Art went up to some of the young players and he said, okay, if you're going to play cards with Rickey, make sure you do it at your own risk. Because Rickey loved, he would compete in the card games. But yeah, he loved, and especially when it came to stealing bases. I mean, he had a PhD in stealing bases, and the kids were learning so much from him. And maybe part of that was because he got to the big leagues. He was 20 when he got called up. And I remember going to those games when I moved to the Coliseum, or moved to the, I guess I did move to the Coliseum in a way, but I moved to the Bay Area.
You lived at the Coliseum, Ken? I didn't know you lived there.
I moved to the Bay Area around the same time that Rickey got called up. And I remember going to a lot of games out there. And I'm not sure, he might have been underrated as a left fielder. He won one Gold Glove, I think. But if you look back on those days of Henderson, Murphy, and Armas, Townie, they were incredible defensively. And I always thought it really helped Rickey that he was a left-handed thrower, that his glove was on his right hand, because he could go to the line. Murphy could do it. He'd cover, the acreage out there in left center, and right center. But Rickey could go to the line like nobody else I ever saw. And it also, he talked about this too. He was an entertainer. I mean, part of the Rickey being Rickey and the Rickey persona was that he had a responsibility, he felt, to entertain. And Canseco talked about this when we had him back at the Coliseum this year, that he looked at as part of his role as a player to entertain. And there was no more entertaining outfield. Think of Dave Henderson and his love for the game and the flair that he played with. When you had Rickey in left and Dave Henderson in center and Canseco in right, it wasn't just that they were great. Those guys were entertainers as well, Townie.
Yeah, we started this thing off at 9 a.m. this morning with Dave Stewart, and talking to Stu, I just brought it up that, when you look at players from the 80s and the early 90s, right? We've talked so much about Charlie Finley and how the A's were broken up and Charlie knew free agency was coming. Well, you have to realize that as an industry in sports, because it happened in football, it happened in basketball, like all of a sudden these leagues and ownership had to understand, what is free agency? How does free agency work? I mean, we've got a bottom line. How much are we making? Well, how much do we want to give it to the players? So there was a lot of labor strife in the 80s. And nowadays, when a player hits free agency and a player gets a big contract, no one even blinks an eye. Like all of a sudden, Sean Manaea today, what was it, 75, 76 million he signed with the New York Mets? You don't even blink an eye. Like Ohtani and then Soto, that's like crazy money. But if you have a Blake Snell signs for 182 million, no one even, who cares? It's not like a big deal anymore. But back then, everybody was trying to figure out, like Nolan Ryan was the first $1 million guy. Well, who's going to be the first 3 and then 4? So there was a lot of contention. And Rickey, like if Rickey Henderson was a free agent today and someone said, oh yeah, Rickey Henderson's getting 10 years, 300 and something million, no one would even blink an eye. But back then it was a different ball game because they were trying to figure out the economics of the game.
He would have gotten about 20 years and $1 billion now. He might, if he was in his prime right now, would you take Rickey or Soto?
Oh, I'd take Rickey Henderson. But my whole point is no one would be freaking out about it. But back then when Rickey got whatever Rickey got, 3, I mean, Mark Langston was the first guy to get 16 million.
Yeah, right. And Rickey was criticized. Yeah, he'd be criticized for the comment, if you're going to pay me like Gallego, I'm going to play like Gallego. And all great due respect to Mike, one of the great guys. And he never took that personally, right? But I think with some of the great athletes, you never lose that chip on your shoulder in that sense. You have something to prove. And I think when Rickey, I think Howard Bryant wrote about this in his book about Rickey, that there was something that he had, that when he started to get paid, that was validation to him. it meant that he had made it. And especially from where he had come from, it meant a lot to Rickey that he was able to look at his career and say, I really earned this. I earned that money.
And we accept now that athletes realize what they're worth, right? The media was not for the players. The owners were working through the media. Like, it's so different now. If you were a star player now, like if you because another guy that we're kind of been honoring lately, who was also, when you think of the greats during that time, is Mike Schmidt. Like, if Mike Schmidt hit free agency, a guy that led the league in home runs 8 times, and what was he, a 10-time Gold Glove winner? I mean, if Mike, who's also 100, I think he's 106 something WAR. I mean, he's another guy that if he would have hit free agency. So those guys got criticized back then for wanting more money. It's just like today, now we accept it, and now we don't even blink when they sign for big deals.
Yeah, let's hope that's a good thing too, because the less we talk about that and focus more on the game, I think we're all better off for it. Those of us who work in the game too, Tony.
No doubt about it. And with Severino signing, well, I don't think we haven't talked to you about it. What'd you think when you saw that headline? Severino signing with the A's.
I was thrilled. Yeah. Right. I was thrilled. And I think that Severino and Springs, and you always say this about a player, especially a pitcher, you always preface it by saying if they stay healthy. But these are two guys that can be top of the rotation starting pitchers. So then you slide everybody else down 3, 4, and 5. So I think the A's have a chance to have a pretty good rotation this year at Downey, and young ball club that played 500 ball during the second half of the season. So, and I have a sense they're not done. Theo Urshela, I've always liked him. I'm not sure that he's going to be hugely impactful, but he's a legitimate major league third baseman. I think still an above average defensive player over there, Downey. So, yeah, I'm pleased with the way the offseason has gone for sure.
Yeah, when you look at the rotation and knowing that Severino gave you 182 innings, you know that you've had J.P. Sears give you 32 starts 2 straight years. You had Springs, you're like, can have electric stuff, came back from Tommy John last year. You're not going to get a huge workload, but if you can get 130-ish around there, and then you think of Mitch Spence, who ended up giving you a lot of starts. I think it was he and Estes gave you both 24. Both Estes starting in the minor league and Mitch Spence starting the bullpen. Both guys pretty durable. If you could get 30 starts out of Severino, Estes, Sears, and Spence, wow. Yeah. That would be like, wow, 4 guys give you 30 starts, and then Springs gives you some really good innings. Like, all of a sudden, that this is a real rotation.
And maybe you might have somebody else join the club too. I'm not sure what David Forrest has done. And then JT Ginn, I thought, did pretty well when he got called up. So there are guys hopefully that'll be called up from the minor leagues that'll join that group as well, Tony. And Severino has had some really good years. I mean, he was shackled by injuries. Tommy John, of course, he had a bad shoulder too. But he started against the A's in the wild card game in 2018 at Yankee Stadium. He's had some really good years and pitched in the postseason last year. So yeah, I've always really liked him. And no, you're right. I mean, they have a chance to have a pretty good rotation, no doubt.
Well, we appreciate you stopping by today. We miss you. It's great to see you. And if people are just listening on A's Cast, it's great to hear your voice. Hope all is well. Happy holidays, and can't wait to see and get this thing going again.
Thanks for doing this today, too, you and the commander. This was really a special show that you guys put together, and it's so appropriate to do it for Rickey. It really is. It's pretty very meaningful that you had this. That A's Cast gives you guys a platform to do this too. It's just really a special thing.
Well, I thank you for saying that, because it's another reason why we created this, right? To be able to celebrate this organization, and obviously today's a day to remember one of the greatest players of all time, the greatest player of our organization, and to have his old teammates and the people around him. When we got word on Friday We weren't sure when it was going to be announced, but we thought it was either late Friday night or Saturday morning, and then give people a day or two and then do something on Monday before Christmas, which would be his 66th birthday. But to give Rickey Henderson, because it was like when he passed, and then all of a sudden, I mean, you have the big Notre Dame going up against Indiana game, and then Saturday you got NFL and you got college football. Just MLB Network isn't enough to carry it all. So I'm glad that we did this today, and thank you for stopping by, because we should honor this man, because he's truly, as we said, he just wasn't great. He's one. It's the great.
He was larger than life. He was larger than life, and we'll remember him often during this season. We have a lot of highlights to play and things, and it's been great to hear Bill's iconic call of the stolen base, the stolen base that broke Brock's record at the Coliseum over at third base. So that was really a cool thing too, to hear Bill, and so the memories will last forever. That's for sure, Tony.
Be well, my friend.
Okay, buddy. Thanks for having me.
The voice of your Oakland the voice of your athletics, the great Ken Korach. Special time to remember Rickey, and as he getting the call, Bill, he ripped from the Mourns, that great to it's.
Do you want to hear it? I have it.
Something like this, Rickey's passing, and now you start to think about, Bill King, and, with Rickey passing, has made me think about the people. We've had former players pass, but this has also made me think of the people around us, like the great Ray Fosse and our good friend Dick Callahan, and the people that have meant so much in our lives that we have lost recently. It's been tough, and it's just it's life. It's a cycle of life. It happens. And, just when you hear Rickey pass at that age, you think of some type of a car accident or something. You just don't think of health would be the reason we would lose Rickey Henderson at 65, because we just seen him, right? It wasn't like he had been dealing with something and we knew about it, or it wasn't like a car accident or something like that. So it's just shocking. But it is just like when we look down at these bobbleheads, right? And we got the Dick Callahan cup here, and we got the Ray Fosse bobblehead, and now Ray Fosse. I mean, you look down, it's like, wow, these people that mean so much in your life are no longer with us. But it's very important that we always remember them, because they're such a huge part of the fabric of what we do, not only as an organization, because obviously it is all about baseball and winning baseball games in between the lines, but also what we do here on A's Cast. It's our responsibility to remember the past and remember the people who helped make everything that we have today.
Yeah, one of the podcasts I put up over the weekend was Rickey's jersey retirement ceremony at the Coliseum, and it was the MC that day was Ray Fosse. Mm-hmm. So Fosse opened. Well, Dick Callahan introduces Ray, and then it goes right into Rickey, and it was awesome to put that up. That's been running on A's Cast, and it's on the if you go to athletics.com/A's Cast and look under our podcast, that's up there. I've been playing the path that we did on Rickey, where it highlights, his upbringing in Oakland, to the minor leagues, to the major leagues, the A's, being traded to the Yankees, Sandy trading back for him, Sandy's comment from our show years ago where he talked about.
Did you have that?
The Sandy comment?
Yeah.
Actually, from him bringing Rickey back. Here it is.
The guy we had hitting leadoff in '88 was a guy named Louis Polonia, who was a pretty good player, but not Rickey Henderson. And we always kept our ear to the ground with Rickey. Rickey, in those days, had a way of wearing out his welcome, and he was, 3 years or so into a 5-year deal, and so we had a chance to get him back. They were looking to move him, and I was really happy we're able to get him back. It wasn't a consensus within the organization to bring him back. No, but my attitude was, what the hell? We're gonna, had a chance to get this guy back. And I remember concluding that deal on the phone in a phone booth in Marin County.
I remember when you told me, you're like, "Hey kids, look up what a phone booth is."
Okay, that's the winter meetings. Was that 2019?
Yeah.
So that's 2019. We were in San Diego.
San Diego, yeah.
So we're in San Diego, winter meetings, and that I will never forget going, whoa. That was pretty heavy, right? Because what did he just say there? This was from Sandy Alderson, one of the great executives this game's ever seen. It was Sandy Alderson talking about, you heard there, Rickey tends to wear out his welcome. And it wasn't a total consensus. Not everybody agreed this was the right deal. Not from the talent standpoint, but of bringing Rickey in. So it's like, wait a minute. Front office worried about bringing Rickey in, but everybody who's down in the clubhouse tells you what a great guy Rickey was. So this takes me back to what I brought up with Stu, and I just brought up with Ken Korach, is this was an era of baseball and an era in all professional sports. We had strikes, we had lockouts, we had labor strife, the fight over money. How are we going to fight over money? And front office always looked at as a guy who was always asking and always complaining about money as a problem. And the media would parrot that. And so all of a sudden, remember, people read, talking about Sandy Alderson being in a phone booth, people read newspapers back then. And I was in high school at the time, and yes, Rickey Henderson had that reputation as a tough guy to deal with, which I got to learn that was all crap. Rickey Henderson understood, I'm better than all these dudes. I should be being paid more than these guys, which we're cool with that now, right? Where we are now in sports, we knew, I always like using Steph Curry because it makes it local. We're watching Steph Curry going, this guy shoots a basketball better than anybody I've ever seen from downtown. There's nobody like him. This kid's got handles. This kid's a leader. He's phenomenal in the community. As a face of the franchise, Steph Curry is as great a face of the franchise. Wife, kids, my God, this kid's golden. If he can just keep his ankles healthy, he's golden. Family, the whole thing. Dad played in the NBA. Mom, she was volleyball player.
Brothers in the NBA.
They're great. Yeah, I mean, just everything about the Currys, you're like, this is golden. Pay him. You pay him, right? We get that now, right? Like, you got no problem paying Tom Brady or whoever, like anybody, Patrick Mahomes, pay him. But back then, they just looked like a pain in the ass and greedy athlete and all of that. So that's what anybody that kept talking about money came off as a bad guy. And that's how the front office viewed bringing Rickey Henderson back. As Sandy told you, everybody's like, I'm not sure if this is the great, and I could see it, right? Can you imagine? You got young Jose Canseco. At some point, this guy's going to be a star. We're going to have to pay him. You want to bring Rickey Henderson in, and Rickey Henderson's talking about money, and he's in Jose's ear. I can hear the conversations now. But that was how the game was back then. They were trying to figure out how to navigate the business and really how to deal with free agency and deal with the money and guaranteed contracts. It was all relatively new to where now free agency is just something that everybody deals with. And it's normal. It's like free agency hits. You've earned the right to be a free agent. Teams bid on you, you sign, and you move forward. It's not, but it wasn't like that in the 80s and the early 90s.
Another good story, too, if you want.
You would know, you weren't around.
Yeah, well, I was barely alive.
Alive.
But another good story, too, I found someone put on Twitter. We can play this before Vuce comes on, is Rickey was on Mike and Mike years ago. And it was the infamous $1 million check he had that he never cashed, and he hung it, and he told the story.
He laminated it.
Yeah. Here's the story.
The check one. Why? Why did you frame the $1 million check and not cash that thing?
At that time,
You had enough money?
No, I can't say I had enough money, but it was based upon, when you're a kid and you want to be a millionaire. And time I got a signing bonus for $1 million. I go, wow, I'm a millionaire. So I'm going to frame this here check and put it on my wall, and I became a millionaire. And
in actuality, not.
I forgot to. That's a lot.
without putting the check in the bank, I think one could argue we're not yet a millionaire, though, right?
I wasn't a millionaire.
Right.
I wasn't even getting no interest.
Right. That's exactly right. So the question is, whatever happened to the check?
Yeah. The Oakland A's finally called me when they was doing their book in December and asked me about where was the check. And I said it was on my wall. They said, "Can you take it down, go cash, and then put a duplicate in the frame
On the wall, yeah.
So I eventually took the check down and went and cashed it.
Okay, well, it's just phenomenal. That's a great story.
There was a lot of good stuff being put out about Rickey over the
You
weekend.
can't make that up. You cannot make that up. He was a one of a kind. Steve Vucinich, A's Hall of Famer, joins us here from the compound down in Arizona. Vuz, how are you?
I'm great. You guys all right?
We're obviously a very tough day, but we knew that this was a day where we needed to honor our franchise's greatest player, and also you being someone who grew up in the Bay Area and in the East Bay, you know what Rickey Henderson meant to so many kids, to the community. It was more than just, hey, this guy is a great leadoff hitter. He's got power. He steals bases. He's electric. I mean, he was a symbol to a lot of people in the community, especially the youth.
It's growing up in East Oakland like I did, Oakland was always considered the ugly stepsister to San Francisco. And when they built the Coliseum and they expanded the port and the arena and everything, it's like Oakland was a leader against San Francisco. They've done more positive things. And probably nobody did more positive things for the city of Oakland than Dave Stewart and Rickey Henderson. And Rickey and David were very proud to be from Oakland, go to high school there, call Oakland their home for many, many years. So it's a special thing for Rickey as it was for Dave, or as it is for Dave. Man, this is just such a sad time. You think this is some guy that can't be broken. And his passing just put everybody in shock.
Yes, there's no question. I mean, just really, really hard to believe. And one of the great things about always bringing you on is that you know everybody from the get-go, from the start. So tell us what it was like when a young Rickey Henderson, the kid from Oakland, gets called up to the Athletics.
Well, first of all, when he got drafted, we had a kid working in the clubhouse named Louis Burrell, who was the older brother of Stanley Burrell, a.k.a. Hammer, MC Hammer. And he said, this guy, Rickey, he's going to make it to the big leagues and he's going to be great. And I said, well, why was he drafted all the way back in the fourth round instead of the first round? But he was the one that made it up in 79. And I gave him number 35, and they said, why 35? And I said, it's because you were a fullback running back in high school, and that's a running back's number. And Rickey kind of liked that. And that's why he kept that until he went to New York and became number 24 and returned to us as 22 and then later 24.
So that's he got the number B originally. You're a running back. I like that because he had a lot of pride in that. We talked to him about it. He obviously he had the ultimate belief in himself, and he believed he would have been an NFL running back. But it's his mother who wanted him to play baseball.
That's right. And I think Rickey asked the part-time scout Jim Gwynn at the time, if what he should do, and he says you should definitely play baseball. You'll last longer. You'll stay healthier. And I don't know if money was a big thing then, but he said you'll make more money.
So what was he like when he first came up as a young kid? I mean, he was only 20 years old.
He actually, I think, appreciated the game, the players he was around. He didn't have the swagger then that he got later on as he became a full-time player. He was kind of quiet, and it's hard to believe that Rickey could have been like that, but I think it was only for 3 months until Billy came in and said, I'm going to make you a star, Billy Martin, and he became one. And then he got a little swagger, and it was good for him, but he backed it up. That's the key thing.
What year? Because I'm looking at the Baseball Reference page. I mean, it's his first full year in 1980. He steals 100 bags, scores 111 runs. When did you really start seeing the entertainer, the swag from Rickey Henderson?
Probably not till the next year in 81. but he had the swag. Guys would tease him. Dwayne Murphy would get on him pretty good, but he knew he was like the best player on that team then, but he didn't say that himself. He let his actions on the field speak for it.
Well, he started with the strike shortened season. He was having an unbelievable. I mean, it's you look back at those times and you just think some of the people were having those years. But yeah, so all of a sudden he is becoming, by the time he's 25, this is a guy who's finishing third in the MVP voting. He's an all-star. He's a Silver Slugger Award winner. How tough was it to see him leave Oakland and go to New York?
You know what? It was tough because, he was one of those guys you had hoped would play his whole career for one team. And with that trade, he went to the Yankees. We got some good prospects back. But when you trade a superstar like that, you never get equal value back. I don't care how many players you get back. So it was tough to see him go there. Why he was traded, he was nearing free agency. We weren't sure if we were going to be able to pay him. The funny thing was the trade, I think, was made at the winter meetings in Houston, and the Yankees would not take Rickey unless he had a contract. So they gave him a long-term contract. And I think it was Sandy Alderson, who worked for us, was kind of the middle in-between guy instead of Rickey's agent, whoever it was at the time. Might have been Richie Bree. But Sandy actually negotiated on behalf of the Yankees to get Rickey to agree to a long-term contract.
You just hear things from back then and you go, is this real? But yes, there's so many things that you think back that, oh my God, can you imagine if we would have had Twitter and that kind of stuff back then? Just the craziness. So you have Sandy Alderson working the deal for Rickey Henderson so he can trade Rickey Henderson.
Exactly.
So essentially, I'm working as your agent so I can then trade you to the other team.
Exactly. Is that unbelievable? I don't think that could happen today.
God, no, it wouldn't happen today. You can't, when you look at Rickey Henderson's numbers, if you just looked at the totality of the numbers and you'd think, how does this guy not play for one team his entire career? I bet most people can't even name all the teams. It's Oakland, Yankees, Padres, Mets, Mariners, Red Sox, Blue Jays, Angels, Dodgers. He played for far more than a third of the league.
That's 9 teams, right?
Yeah, 9 teams.
When you think about it, he should have stayed. We wish he would have stayed in Oakland, but who knows if he would have, because Rickey wanted to keep playing. And how much did he have in the tank? I mean, after all that, he played 2 years of independent ball.
Yeah. So as Sandy Alderson, I don't know if did you hear the clip of Sandy Alderson that we had with him in 2019 at the winter meetings where he talked about bringing Rickey Henderson back? And did you hear that, by the way?
I did not.
Okay. So Sandy told us that Rickey could wear out his welcome in certain places, and that when they were looking to trade for him in '89, that the powers that be, that would be the Walt Jocketties and that whole part of the front office, it wasn't a consensus among the group that, yes, this is a good idea, but Sandy said, what the hell, I'm going to do it anyway. So what was it like back then inside the walls of the A's that you remember bringing Rickey Henderson back from the Yankees back to the Athletics?
Well, he shows up in the clubhouse during the game. Flight was a little bit late, so he wasn't going to play or wasn't in the lineup. And he was amazed that we had the 2-in-1 socks. He says, New York, you couldn't wear those. So he automatically felt a little more freedom in Oakland. You can express yourself more in Oakland than you could with the Yankees. So everybody was, maybe some people were against it, but the thing was he was going to be a free agent anyway. So at least we're going to get him for a half a year and see what happens after that and hopefully work out a long-term contract. He had worn out his welcome other places, but not really in Oakland when we did trade him.
So Rickey shows up 4 different times. What was it like, young Rickey Henderson versus when we start talking about later in life? I mean, his last stint, got to go look back because I remember being a part of it. 1998. So I hardly remember. I remember him obviously as a Padre, because as a Padre, got his 3,000th hit. He scored the record, breaking the runs record. I really don't remember him as an Angel. It wasn't that many games, but what was it like when he came back and he's now almost 40 in 1998?
Well, it's funny. I kidded him. Billy Martin really helped make Rickey a star, and Billy and Rickey were tight. And I asked him when he came back, I said, well, that's 4 times now. Are you trying to break Billy's record with the Yankees? And he laughed at that, but he was happy to be back in Oakland. Who knows? We might have signed him again if he didn't go to independent ball. But the question was, how much did he have left in the tank? He was still a good defender. He could still take his walks. He knew the strike zone. But when he came back that last time, he knew it was the last time.
You've been around the greatest players in our franchise's history, which means the greats of the greats. Because when you look at our franchise and you look at the Hall of Fame, A's players and guys who played in Oakland all over the place. Just your thoughts on Rickey Henderson and his greatness as a player.
Tony, I had lunch Saturday. Tony La Russa was there, Bud Selig, Jerry Reinsdorf, Mike Hampton, Steve Stone, a couple other guys. And we're talking about the greatest players. And there was not argument, but there was discussion. Willie Mays, best center fielder. Best pitcher, Koufax. Nolan Ryan, who knows? But when it got to best leadoff hitter ever, everybody agreed it was Rickey. And you don't even have to put a second guy in the equation. You don't put Vince Coleman up there. You don't put whoever some of the top leadoff guys are today. It was without a doubt and a lock that it was Rickey Henderson.
Yeah, I know Pete Rose led off. I mean, this is part of this before I was born, and then I was a real little kid, so I didn't see it. I know Pete Rose led off a lot, but really there was nobody even in the conversation, right? I mean, there's really not anyone you can really say is in the class. There's no one really you can even compare. Well, if we're talking just as a leadoff hitter, there's really no one you could even compare to him.
You know what? The only guy you maybe could compare with, and I'm a little prejudiced too, would be Campaneris. I mean, he was a great leadoff hitter. He stole bases. He had 22 home runs one year, but he's still not near Rickey's numbers. And nobody else is. His numbers are off the charts, like you said.
I guess Ichiro could get a little love from the leadoff spot, and he's going to be going into the Hall of Fame. But the numbers here, I mean, they're just he leads by – I mean, it's like his lead in these categories are just there's someone's going to have to, and that's part of the greatness, you know, part of being one of the greats. And that's why people all the time, you know, now baseball fans want to ask, is Shohei Ohtani the greatest player of all time? And I go, no. You got to play a long time. Longevity is a big part of our game. Now, does Ohtani have the greatest skill set we've ever seen? That's hard to argue. It's hard to argue against that. I think he has the greatest skill set. But to be the greatest of players of all time, you got to do it for years and years. Your body's got to be able to handle it. You got to be aged. You got to still be productive as you get older. As you talk about Willie Mays and you talk about a lot of these great players, they still, you know, they lost as they got into their 40s, but still in their 30s, they were still they were terrific players and very productive. Let's end on this. One thing that
I got one for you, and I apologize if you guys have covered this. Do you know what record Rickey was most proud of?
No.
Runs scored.
Oh.
Because he said, I was helping the team. And that's why he's more proud of that than the stolen bases, the walks, 3,000 hits.
Well, no question. The name of the game is to score runs. Right. Touch home plate. No human being has touched home plate more than Rickey Henderson. That's a big part of, like, you know, it's always going to – Willie Mays played center field. It's a premium defensive position. Willie Mays had all the home runs, the RBIs, a career 300 hitter. I mean, Willie Mays could be the greatest player of all time. It's going to be tough it's tough for a left fielder to outdo a center fielder just from the defensive standpoint. But when you talk about touching home plate, nobody has touched home plate. But the one thing that we've heard, and unfortunately this happens when someone passes, but now you hear from all the people that played with him, and MLB Network just ran just 2 days of nothing but Rickey Henderson. So you're getting all the guys that played from it with him, and you're, hearing, whether it was Don Mattingly or Mike Piazza, and of course Dave Stewart was a part of it. Just talk about Rickey's relationship and how much everybody just loved playing with him.
They did. The players that played with him, and then I got to see, once he retired and he came around Oakland, the visiting players would go up to him and embrace him and knew about his history, when a lot of players today don't know about anybody's history in the game. But our players loved him. He was funny. Some of his card and domino games were classics, the way they'd go back and forth. But everybody loved Rickey. How could you not?
No doubt about it. He will be missed. Voos, happy holidays for you and the family. And can't wait to see you spring training. You be well, my friend.
We get that golf game in this spring, too.
I'm holding you to that.
All right. Take care. Happy holidays, everybody.
Take care, Voos. Steve Vucinich, A's Hall of Famer. As he says, a sock and jock guy, but he's far more than that, also a historian for us. Let's get out of here. Before we get out of here, let's play that the tribute video that we have to honor the great Rickey Henderson.
When I lead the game, I want them to think of Rickey Henderson as a player that no matter what, he was a diehard to the game. He loved the game. He probably would do anything for the game.
Rickey going back near the wall. He leaps. And he makes the catch. It is Rickey time.
I want them to know that when I took the field, I gave 100, 110% out there.
Rickey Henderson, no contest, steals third base, jerks the bag from its moorings, and holds it aloft, representing number 939.
I hope most of them know that I had in my heart to always be a winner. The only you get to glory out of this game if you become a winner. And in my heart, I always felt that I was a winner, and I took the field to win every day.
You think of the skill set to be able to put up the incredible numbers over an entire season, but then you think of the skill set of being able to take over playoff series. Now, you had a bunch of playoff records, but obviously that changes when you expand playoffs, and you got guys that have been, the Yankee players starting in, that would have been 96, and then they were in the playoffs every year. And now the Astros, I mean, you got these guys, Boston guys, they played in so many playoff rounds. So it's changed the playoff records, but to this day, he still has the most steals in postseason history. I'll never forget, it was at the very end of Derek Jeter's career, 20 years. And I remember Derek Jeter stole a base. It was in his last year. I mean, Derek Jeter now is the all-time stolen base leader in Yankee history, passing Rickey Henderson. And you're like, what? Wait a minute, what? Rickey only played for the Yankees 1985 through the trade that sent him back to Oakland in 89. So from 85 to 89, Rickey Henderson stole more bases than anybody in Yankee history, and then took Derek Jeter 20 years to eclipse that.
Jeter finished with 358 steals as a Yankee.
Is that crazy?
How many Rickey have as a Yankee? It usually tells you at the bottom.
Okay. Oh, yeah. Okay, hold on. Stolen bases. Rickey had 326 in 5 years.
So it took Jeter until he was like 36, 37 to finally break the record.
Oh, okay. So it wasn't the very last year.
No, but yeah, because he had 358, so he would have 348 going into the year because he stole 10 bases his last year.
Yeah, wow. I mean, it's pretty incredible. But it's the skill set in the postseason where every run, like how we view. That's why Rickey's career will age unbelievable, because the more we get into analytics, you realize he's an analytics darling. What do you want to do? Score runs. How do you score runs? You got to get on base. What did Rickey do?
Got on base.
Gets on base.
And scored runs.
So it's like you look at in the postseason, every single run is so valuable. How do we just get on the board? How do you score a run? And his ability to take over series. He had a huge series in Toronto. He had a huge World Series against the Giants. There's so much that he could do. And a player of his skill set could just absolutely overwhelm a team in the postseason. It was incredible. To where most guys can beat you one way, he could beat you in so many different ways. And that's why, two things I really wanted to get across today is, hey, Rickey Henderson was a good dude. Great teammate, great person. Really, I think the Piazza story about Rickey wanted to make sure that everybody got a full playoff share, right? When other guys didn't want to do that, Rickey's like, pay everybody. Rickey was a pay everybody guy. And that would be taking money out of his pocket too. Because the veteran guys could have all got the full share and then not given full. Rickey wanted everybody to get it full. He's a generous person. But also, I want people to truly understand how he affected the entire game. Because all we do is see highlights now, and we see him stealing second base. Well, Rickey on first base truly affected the entire defense. The pitcher, the catcher, the first baseman, whoever was going to cover the bag, outfielders. There was so much energy. He absorbed so much energy from the other team. It was unreal. Like probably a player. And, Bonds was very similar in a different way. Bonds stole a ton of bases, stole over 500 bases. But when Super Barry was happening, it was like looming whenever Barry was going to be coming on the on-deck circle. Everybody was worried, S-bomb, Barry's coming up this inning. Like Barry consumed so much of the energy because he was such a productive player. There's very few of these guys that every single game, the game plan, like Lawrence Taylor in football. Lawrence Taylor, that era, everybody talks about, first and foremost, when you went to the line of scrimmage as a quarterback, you got to know where's Lawrence Taylor. And then we'll figure out where the other 10 guys are. Where's Lawrence Taylor? And we're going to run at him, not away from him. Or if we're throwing the football, all the protection has to be on the side of Lawrence Taylor. Lawrence Taylor took all the oxygen from everybody. Rickey Henderson was similar. That's how great. When a player affects the other team's game plan that much, right? When we think of Steph Curry or what Michael Jordan was, right? You had to concentrate so much of your game plan when you went in to take on the Chicago Bulls. You knew Michael's going to score. He's the scorer. And then, Michael's all world on defense too. He absorbs so much of the energy and the oxygen in the room. And that's the type of player Rickey Henderson was. He affected so much of the game. And to think you do that playing in 162 games and then think about doing that in the postseason. It's pretty remarkable. It's pretty remarkable.
Yeah, just going over, everyone, if you don't know the accolades, they're everywhere. The 10-time All-Star, the 1990 AL MVP. We mentioned all the records he has. Hembo sent us that thread. The thread he sent was incredible, breaking down everything with Rickey. We probably won't see another player, especially put it out there. I don't think we'll see another leadoff hitter like Rickey Henderson. No, Tawny had a great year, but he's not Rickey Henderson. They're not even the same player. Tawny doesn't play in the field either, so that kind of hurts.
Well, don't take away from what Otani.
Oh, no, not at all.
50-50 is incredible.
It is. But what Rickey was able to do as a leadoff hitter year in and year out until he's 40 years old, 40 plus, is truly remarkable, and I don't think we'll see another player like him.
Quickly, we've had a lot of stuff happen in baseball.
There's a lot of stuff happened this morning.
Walker Buehler has signed with the Boston Red Sox 1 year, $21 million. Christian Walker, this affects us, has now signed, leaving the Diamondbacks. He's now signed with the Houston Astros. Paul Goldschmidt is a Yankee. He's going to play first base. Josh Naylor, shocking, but this is also, I was very happy to see an article on The Athletic that there's starting to be a real drumbeat about a salary cap, because Josh Naylor should not be leaving the Cleveland Guardians, but he has been traded to Arizona so they could sign 38-year-old Carlos Santana back. But obviously Naylor's a free agent after this season. But yeah. Josh Naylor's a D-back. Another great player comes to the National League West.
Speaking of the National League West and the D-backs, Jock Peterson just signed a 2-year deal this morning with the Rangers. So that affects the Athletics with him now signing with the Rangers. Jock playing in the NLS. That's from Buster Olney.
Jesus Luzardo has been traded to the Philadelphia Phillies. Sean Manaea has signed a 3-year deal to be back with the Mets, 3 years, $75 million.
The only thing really that happened too is, it was a foregone conclusion. Andrew McCutcheon's back with the Pirates 1 more year. That was another thing that happened this morning. I'm just saying, but Buster Olney and Jeff Passan are tweeting about it. It's a big deal. I don't think it is, but everyone's expected him to be back. We're going over baseball news. It's not like I said, Gio Urshela, deal's official with the A's.
You want to play the crickets with McCutcheon? You're just saying that because you're a Pirates guy.
Oh, it is news that happened this morning. That's all.
Is it a minor league deal?
That's a 1-year, $5 million deal.
Nathaniel Lowe.
Oh, yeah. Traded to
Not Lau, because when you go to shop and you want to get hardware, you go to where?
Lowe's.
Not Lau's, you go to Lowe's.
And Josh Lowe is also a Ray, but there's Brandon Lau. Nathaniel Lowe now national.
Now he's a Nat. He didn't have a very good year last year in those tight pants. He's now a Nat.
And they traded for a reliever that had over a 4 ERA.
Well, and Jake Berger, you got to figure out a sponsorship with that. He's now going to play first base for the Rangers.
So they now have him and Jock.
Well, Jock will play third.
Well, Jock will play DH, slumps on outfield.
But he'll probably play third, and then Berger will play first, right?
Isn't Jock left-handed?
No, not. I mean, I'm thinking
Josh Young.
Josh Young. He'll play third, and Berger
will play first. Yes, and Jock will DH.
Jock will DH
and play some outfield
with his pearls.
Yeah,
but yeah. So baseball news going on.
I don't think anything else happened.
That will do it for this special edition of A's Cast Live. It's just. We just got a report from Major League Baseball. Oh, it is believed that Ichiro will get all the votes to be. I mean, yeah. How do you?
Oh, yeah. That's another thing. Real quick on the way out, there were 28 people that didn't vote for Rickey Henderson when he went into the Hall of Fame.
28.
Yeah.
When you talk about an archaic system that needs to change, the Baseball Writers Association,
94.8%,
who's even in it anymore?
Yeah. 28 of 539 Hall of Fame voters didn't include him on their ballot. How do you not even put him? I saw someone this weekend vote for Russell Martin for the Hall of Fame. Russell Martin had a good career. Russell Martin is not a Hall of Famer. Rickey Henderson's a Hall of Famer. How do you not put him on your ballot?
How can you not vote for someone who has 100? What was Rickey's 111 WAR?
111.1.
111.1. If you're over 100, you're one of the greatest players who have ever played.
Correct.
Like if you go to WAR, Baseball Reference WAR, and you look at the top WARs, anybody who's 100 or above, like Joe Morgan's at 100. Somebody else is there at 100 with them. Anybody who's 100 and up is a great of the great.
I mean, here I'll just give you the list.
So like Joe Morgan's at 100. There's somebody else who's a great who's with him at 100.
Warren Spahn.
Warren Spahn, one of the all-time guys. These are there's not anybody that has 100 plus who we don't consider an all-time great.
Yeah, and they're all in the Hall of Fame, but one.
Clemens and Bonds.
Oh,
right?
but Clemens too. Yeah, sorry, Clemens and Bonds. Yeah.
But every one of these guys, you look at the list. It's Gehrig, it's Stan Musial. Oh, A-Rod is in there.
Oh yeah.
I mean, it's Willie Mays, Henry Aaron, Cy Young. I mean, it's the greats of the greats. But you're talking about Rickey Henderson at 111.1. He's one of the all-time greats. Rickey Henderson is right behind Lou Gehrig. I mean, you're talking about anybody, and 28 people didn't vote for Rickey Henderson to be in the Hall of Fame?
Yeah.
That's crazy.
So that's why, whenever we talk about Mariano Rivera being the first unanimous player, I mean, how did you not vote for Henry Aaron? How did you not vote for Babe Ruth? How did you not vote for Mickey Mantle? How did you not vote for Joe DiMaggio? Like, how did you not vote for some of the greatest of the greats? Rickey Henderson, Randy Johnson.
I was just looking at
Greg Maddux.
Watching the tribute to Mike Schmidt on MLB Network. Mike Schmidt's 106.5, and he did that in 18 years, in less years than a lot of these guys. Mike Schmidt, I mean, when you go greatest third baseman of all time, it's not even close. Mike Schmidt's 106 point something?
106.9.
106, so he's almost basically 107 in 18 years.
Oh, well, there were 16 gutless members who didn't vote for him either.
Like, how is that possible? Like, how is that possible? That would be like Joe Montana. Yeah, I'm not voting for him.
You know,
Lawrence Taylor. Yeah, I'm not voting for him.
9 people didn't.
Tom Brady. I'm not voting for Tom Brady to be in the Hall of Fame.
9
Like,
people
what?
did. 9 people didn't vote for Henry Aaron.
I'm not going to vote for Walter Payton.
Yeah.
Can you imagine? Can you imagine like these greats? Like, I'm not voting. Michael Jordan, I'm not voting for him. Why would I? No. He's already going to get in. He doesn't need my vote. Can you imagine someone saying that?
23 people thought Willie Mays wasn't a Hall of Famer.
Yeah, it's like, I'm not going to vote for Magic or Bird. And they made the league. The league is the league because Magic or Bird, but I'm leaving him off my ballot.
Wayne Gretzky I didn't like him as a Blue, so I'm not voting for him.
Wayne Gretzky has more what does he have?
He has more assists than the next closest has in points.
Yeah, I'm not going to vote for him. That's how stupid baseball writers are. It's amazing. I hope you enjoyed it. What a great day today. To honor it's a tough day, obviously, but it's great. We need to honor him. We need to put this out there so people can watch this throughout the holidays and remember truly one of the greats of the greats. We want to thank Dave Stewart, Carney Lansford, David Feldman, Jose Canseco, Terry Steinbach, Shooty Babitt, Ken Korach, and Steve Vucinich. Because that's the thing is the passing of somebody is very, very tough, but how you honor them, you got to do it the right way. And I want to do that today. And we talked about that right after we found out that Rickey Henderson passed, and we had to honor him our way, and to have his peers and the people around him, the people who loved him, come on here today and talk about what he meant to them, their lives, to this organization, to the Bay Area, to Oakland, to the community, to the East Bay. He meant a lot to a lot of people. He was a tremendous symbol in the community, and so many people looked up to him. And that's why it was so important for us today to do this show. So everybody, happy holidays, Merry Christmas. Have a safe New Year. We will be back in the new year. Anything else that you'd like to throw out there?
No, I thought you did a great job talking to everyone.
Well, I thought you did a great job getting guests.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
No, it was quick. We put it together last minute, but we wanted to do it for you guys, the fans, because we know how much Rickey meant to everybody. You can't say enough just what a cool, down-to-earth, regular guy he really, really was. I was still shocked. At Raider games, he'd pop up. You'd say, "Hey, Rick," and he'd go up the stairs, and next thing you know, I would be going at the end of the game, back in the day where I'd walk through the West Side Club to do the post-game show, and Rickey'd just be sitting at the bar hanging with people. I mean, this is Babe Ruth. This is Michael Jordan. This way. He's at a Raider game just hanging out with people because that's who Rickey was. So there's the greatness and the stats, and this will never happen. But then you need to honor that this was the generous guy. This was a man of the people. He was a champion of the people. And when Rickey Henderson showed up, man, it was electric. He was Rickey Henderson. And he's going to be missed. But I can guarantee you this show and this up-and-coming season, I mean, he'll never be forgotten. We'll never take the bobbleheads down. We'll always honor Rickey Henderson. And we'll always know Rickey as truly one of the greats of all time. And it's important to say the greatest of all time, no question. But it's very, very important to remember that he's truly one of the greats in our game. He's in the upper echelon. There's very few of those guys there's very few coming. To be up there with Mays and Ruth and Aaron and Ted and these guys, this is where Rickey belongs. The greats of the greats. And he'll never be forgotten. Thank you, everybody, for watching this special edition of A's Cast Live. Happy holidays, and we'll see you in the new year.
Harold Reynolds was on A's Cast Live and described the phone call he got from Rickey Henderson in 1987.
Rickey's always talking in the third person, and I'm sure you guys have got to know him a little bit. And so, he may be playing cards and go, "Rickey got a sweet hand. Rickey getting ready to sweat right now." Everything's third person with him. And so that year, 1987, is the only time in the 80s that Rickey did not win a stolen base title. and he's stealing at that time like 100 bases a year. So I ended up winning that year with 60. I think Rickey got hurt in May or something like that, and he already had 30 in May. So I win on the last day. Willie Wilson had 59. I had 59. I steal a bag. Willie Wilson doesn't. I'm the greatest of all time. You know, I win the title, right? So I get home the next day. Season's over, and my phone rings. No caller ID in those days. Hello, Henderson here. Hey, Rick, what's going on? I'm thinking he's calling to congratulate me. He goes, 60 stolen bases? You ought to be ashamed. Rickey has 60 at the All-Star break. Click, and hung up the phone.
Oh, God, that is so good. That is so good. Oh, man.
So years later, he goes into a Hall of Fame in Cooperstown, and, you know, Rickey and I are tight. He signs a picture for me, and it has, stolen base champ, Rickey Henderson. I love it. It's on my wall at work.
To listen to the full interview and much more, go to athletics.com/A'sCast.
This has been a presentation of The Athletics.